Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the true dragon god, reincarnated as Ahuma. Naruto x Ghislaine Dedoldia x Eris Boreas Greyrat Mushoku Tensei. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Rift Between Worlds. The chakra burned differently in his veins today. Naruto Uzumaki stood atop the Hokage monument, golden hair rustling in the pre-dawn breeze. Azure eyes fixed on the horizon where night reluctantly surrendered to the approaching day. 6 months had passed since the Fourth Great Ninja War. 6 months since Kagaya's defeat. 6 months of rebuilding, of nightmares. Of a strange restlessness that crawled beneath his skin like lightning seeking ground. "Something's wrong with me, Kurama," he murmured, pressing a palm to his chest. Within the seal, the nine tails stirred, crimson eyes narrowing. "Your chakra fluctuations have been unusual. Even for you, Kit." Unusual was an understatement. Twice in the past week, Naruto had woken to find his apartment bathed in a soft, golden light emanating from his own body. The previous day, during a simple A-rank mission, he'd called upon Kurama's chakra only to find something else, a nswering, something ancient and unfamiliar that tasted of ozone and eternity. "Maybe I should talk to Granny Tsunade about it," Naruto mused, wincing as another pulse of strange energy rippled through his chakra network. It didn't hurt, precisely, but the sensation reminded him of a limb awakening from prolonged numbness, pins and needles on a cosmic scale. "Perhaps," the fox agreed, uncommonly subdued. "There is something about this energy that concerns me." That admission alone was enough to make Naruto's shoulders tense. If something could worry a being as powerful as Kurama, it warranted serious attention. He turned away from the sunrise, preparing to head to the Hokage Tower, when a vibration in the air stopped him cold. 50 meters ahead, hanging in empty space, reality twisted. It began as a pinprick of darkness against the morning sky, no larger than a Senbon needle. Then it widened, edges fraying like torn fabric, revealing glimpses of somewhere else beyond the tear, flashes of unfamiliar terrain. Strange colors, and what appeared to be writing in no language Naruto recognized. The rift hummed with power, sending reverberations through the surrounding air. That made his teeth ache and his hair stand on end. "What the hell?" Naruto breathed, instinctively slipping into a defensive stance. The rift pulsed once, twice, then disgorged a creature unlike an why Naruto had encountered in the shinobi world. It resembled a wolf in the same way a nightmare resembles a dream, similar basic structure but twisted into something fundamentally wrong. Larger than an Inuzuka Ninken. With 6 legs ending in serrated claws and skin that shimmered with iridescent scales rather than fur, the beast landed on the monument with surprising grace. 3 pairs of yellow eyes fixed on Naruto as a mouth filled with crystalline teeth parted in what might have been a smile. Different air, it spoke, voice like gravel through a meat grinder. Different world, but same prey. Naruto's eyes widened. "You can talk." "In tongues of many worlds," the creature replied, taking a prowling step forward. "Your essence smells familiar. Old. You carry something that belongs elsewhere." Chakra gathered in Naruto's palm, spiraling into the familiar shape of a Rasengan. "I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm not letting you into the village." The beast's laughter sounded like shattering glass. "Not here for village. Here for you, dragon child." It launched itself forward with blinding speed, 6 claws gouging deep furrows in the stone of the Hokage monument. Naruto leapt sideways, the creature's teeth snapping shut on empty air where he'd stood a heartbeat earlier. He countered with the Rasengan, driving the sphere of chakra toward the beast's flank, only for the attack to sputter and transform mid-strike. What slammed into the creature wasn't Naruto's familiar blue Rasengan, but a swirling vortex of golden energy tinged with white. The impact threw the beast 20 meters backward, its hide smoking where the attack had connected. "What the?" Naruto stared at his hand in shock. The altered technique had depleted barely any chakra, yet its power had exceeded a standard Rasengan by an order of magnitude. The beast struggled to its feet, scales blackened where Naruto's attack had landed. Its yellow eyes now held something new, fear. "You wake already. Too soon. Master will be displeased." It backed toward the rift, which still hung open like a wound in reality. Others will come. Many others. The barrier's thin. Before Naruto could respond, the creature leapt backward into the rift, which sealed itself with a sound like thunder contained underwater. The morning fell silent once more, leaving only gouged stone and the scent of ozone as evidence of the encounter. Naruto stood motionless, staring at the space where the rift had been, his mind racing. "Dragon child," he whispered. What did it mean, Kurama? The fox was uncharacteristically quiet for several moments before responding. "I don't know, but during our battle with that creature, I sensed something beneath your chakra. Something older than me, older than the sage himself, perhaps." A chill ran down Naruto's spine. "That's impossible. So were many things before you accomplished them," Kurama replied dryly. "We should inform the Hokage about this rift immediately. If there are more of these creatures." Naruto nodded, casting one last glance at the sunrise before disappearing in a blur of speed toward the Hokage tower. You're tellin' me that a six-legged wolf creature emerged from a tear in space, attacked you, called you, dragon child, and then retreated when you hit it with a golden Rasengan." Kakashi Hatake, the sixth Hokage, leaned back in his chair, visible eye betraying nothing of his thoughts. Naruto crossed his arms. "I know how it sounds, but yeah. And you didn't think to capture this creature for questioning. It moved fast," Naruto defended. "Besides, I was a little distracted by the whole reality tearing open thing. And my Rasengan going weird." Kakashi sighed, setting down the mission report he'd been reviewing before Naruto's abrupt arrival. "Show me." "Show you what?" "This golden Rasengan." Naruto extended his right hand, focusing chakra into his palm as he'd done thousands of times before. The familiar spiraling sphere took shape, standard blue at first, then fluctuated, threads of gold and white interweaving with the blue, expanding slightly before stabilizing into a perfect orb of swirling golden energy. Kakashi stood so quickly his chair nearly toppled backward. "Release it, now." Naruto let the technique dissipate, frowning at his former sensei's reaction. "What's wrong?" Instead of answering immediately, Kakashi moved to the window, scanning the horizon as if expecting to see more rifts opening above Konoha. After a long moment, he turned back to Naruto. "I've only seen energy like that once before," he said quietly. "During our mission to the Land of Snow, there were ancient ruins with similar golden energy. The writings there spoke of powers that predated the shinobi world, forces that existed before chakra as we understand it." Naruto's eyebrows rose. "You think this has something to do with those ruins?" "I think," Kakashi said carefully, "that we need more information before jumping to conclusions. I'm calling in Shikamaru and assembling a specialized team to investigate this rift phenomenon. In the meantime, I want you to see Tsunade for a full examination." "I feel fine," Naruto protested. "You've been experiencing abnormal chakra fluctuations, encountered an extra-dimensional entity that specifically targeted you, and now your Rasengan has transformed into an unknown energy technique," Kakashi enumerated flatly. "Humor me." Naruto recognized the tone. It wasn't a request. "Fine. And Naruto," Kakashi added as the blonde shinobi turned to leave, "don't mention the dragon child comment to anyone else yet. Not until we understand what we're dealing with." With a reluctant nod, Naruto departed, leaving Kakashi alone with his troubled thoughts. Absolutely fascinating, Tsunade murmured, green medical chakra flowing from her hands as she conducted her examination. "Your chakra network has always been unique, Naruto, but these changes." "What changes?" Naruto asked, trying not to fidget. He sat shirtless on an examination table in a private room at Konoha Hospital, surrounded by specialized medical equipment that Tsunade had insisted on using for his examination. The legendary medic Nin frowned in concentration. "Your tenketsu points are reconfiguring themselves. It's subtle, but they're forming new patterns of never documented in any shinobi." "Is that dangerous?" "I don't know," she admitted, which did nothing for Naruto's growing anxiety. "It doesn't appear to be causing you any harm. In fact, your overall chakra capacity has increased by approximately 12% since your last physical 3 months ago." Naruto brightened. "So it's a good thing." "It's an unknown thing," Tsunade corrected. deactivating her diagnostic jutsu and stepping back. And in my experience, unknown changes to fundamental chakra structure are rarely good without a price. She moved to a nearby counter, scribbling notes on a chart. I want to monitor these changes daily. Report any new symptoms immediately. Unusual dreams, physical sensations, changes in your 5 senses, anything. What about my Rasengan turning gold? Naruto asked. Kakashi-sensei seemed pretty freaked out about it. Tsunade's amber eyes narrowed. Show me. Once again, Naruto formed the Rasengan, watching his blue chakra transmuted to swirling gold and white. Tsunade's sharp intake of breath confirmed his suspicion that this was far from normal. Try adding wind nature to it, she suggested. Like your Rasenshuriken. Naruto complied, expecting the usual difficulty in combining shape and nature transformation. Instead, the golden energy responded instantly, forming a perfect Rasenshuriken with minimal effort, except the blades weren't composed of wind chakra. They appeared to be made of pure light, rotating silently around a golden core. I've never felt anything like this, Naruto breathed, staring at the transformed technique hovering above his palm. It's easier. Like the energy wants to be shaped. Release it, Tsunade ordered, her voice strained. Immediately, Naruto let the technique disperse, golden motes fading into the air. What's going on, Granny? You look like you've seen a ghost. Tsunade returned to her notes, writing furiously. Chakra as we understand it is a combination of physical and spiritual energy that evolved in humans after the Sage of Six Paths. Before that, the energy system was different. Different how? That's just it. We don't know much about pre-chakra energy systems. Most records were lost during the formation of the hidden villages. She set down her pen and fixed Naruto with a serious look. But there are scattered references in ancient texts to Golden Een. RGY associated with beings that existed before humans, or at least, before humans as we know them. A chill ran down Naruto's spine. Like that creature called me, Dragon Child. Exactly. Dragons feature prominently in pre-shinobi mythology, usually as primordial entities of immense power. She sighed heavily. Unfortunately, most of this is academic speculation. The practical reality is that your chakra is changing. And we need to understand why. Naruto nodded slowly. So what do we do now? For starters, you're going to give me a blood sample. Then you're going to meet with the Team K. Akashi is assembling to investigate these rifts. She handed him his shirt. And you're going to be very, very careful with that new energy of yours until we understand what it is. Troublesome, Shikamaru Nara muttered, examining the area where Naruto had encountered the rift. No residual chakra signature, no physical evidence beyond these claw marks. The Nara clan genius crouched atop the Hokage monument, fingertips tracing the gouges left by the six-legged beast. Beside him, Sai sketched the pattern of damage while Ino Yamanaka conducted a sensory sweep of the surrounding area. Naruto stood a few paces back, arms crossed as he watched their investigation. There is something, Ino said slowly, eyes closed in concentration. Not chakra exactly, more like an echo, as if reality itself was bruised here. Sakura Haruno, who had joined them after finishing her hospital shift, frowned. Can you describe it more precisely? Ino's brow furrowed. It feels like when you press on a healing bruise, that same sense of lingering damage. Except it's not physical tissue that was damaged, but space itself. That aligns with reports from the other sites, Shikamaru said, straightening up. We've received word of 3 more rift appearances in the Land of Fire within the past 12 hours. All matching Naruto's description. Other rifts? Naruto asked sharply. Did more creatures come through? Yes, Kakashi confirmed, appearing in a swirl of leaves. 2 near the border with the Land of Rivers, 1 just outside a farming village 20 kilometers east. Local Shino. Bai engaged the entities, similar to what you described, though with variations. 6-limbed predators with unusual abilities. Casualties? Sakura asked, her medical training coming to the fore. 3 injured at the border. 1 critically. None at the village. They were fortunate to have a Jonin visiting family there. Kakashi's visible eye hardened. But we can't rely on luck. These rifts are appearing with increasing frequency. And we need to understand why. And why they called Naruto Dragon child, Sai added quietly. All eyes turned to the blonde shinobi, who shifted uncomfortably under their scrutiny. Lady Tsunade's examination revealed unusual changes in Naruto's chakra network, Kakashi explained. Changes that coincide with the appearance of these rifts. You think I'm causing them? Naruto asked, alarmed. Not intentionally, Shikamaru clarified. But there may be a connection. The timing is suspicious. We need more data, Ino insisted. Correlation doesn't equal causation. Sakura moved to stand beside Naruto, her expression determined. Whatever's happening, we'll figure it out together. Kakashi nodded. That's why I've assembled this team. Shikamaru for strategy, Ino for sensory abilities, Sai for reconnaissance, Sakura for medical support, and Naruto as our connection to the phenomenon. What's our first move? Naruto asked. Intelligence gathering, Shikamaru replied. We need samples from the rift sites, eyewitness accounts, and any historical records that might mention similar incidents. I've already sent requests to the other villages, Kakashi added. Gaara has offered Suna's full cooperation, and the Tsuchikage reports similar anomalies appearing near Iwagakure. So this is happening everywhere, Naruto murmured. It appears so, Kakashi confirmed grimly. Which makes understanding it all the more urgent. A sudden pressure in the air cut off further discussion. 20 meters away, directly above the carved stone face of the fifth Hokage. Space began to distort. Another rift, Sakura shouted, pulling on her combat gloves. Positions, Shikamaru ordered, instantly assuming tactical command. Sai, aerial reconnaissance. Ino, sensory perimeter. Sakura, defense readiness. Naruto, I know, Naruto said, stepping forward as golden chakra began to shimmer around his body. I'll handle whatever comes through. The rift widened more quickly than the previous one, expanding from pinprick to meter-wide tear in seconds. Unlike before, no creature emerged immediately. Instead, tendrils of purplish energy snaked from the opening, probing the air like curious fingers. It's different, Ino called, her voice strained. This energy signature is more complex, more organized. Naruto felt something strange, a pull, subtle but insistent, drawing him toward the rift. Within his mindscape, Kurama growled in warning. Kid, be careful, that thing is reacting to your energy. The purple tendrils suddenly froze, then swiveled in unison to point directly at Naruto. A voice emerged from the rift, neither male nor female, speaking in a language none of them recognized, yet somehow, Naruto understood. Orsted fragment detected. Initializing retrieval protocol. What did it say? Sakura demanded, but Naruto had no chance to respond. The tendrils shot forward with impossible speed, wrapping around his limbs before anyone could react. Golden energy erupted from Naruto's body in response, battling the purple restraints as his teammates launched into action. Shadow possession jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow stretched toward the rift, only to pass through it without effect. Sakura lunged forward, chakra-enhanced fist raised to strike the tendrils, but an invisible barrier repelled her with enough force to send her skidding backward. I can't breach its perimeter, she shouted. Sai's ink beast suffered the same fate, dissolving upon contact with the rift's energy field. Ino attempted to use her mind transfer technique, only to recoil with a cry of pain, blood trickling from her nose. Its consciousness is wrong, she gasped. Fragmented, like trying to enter thousands of minds at once. Meanwhile, the tendrils continued to draw Naruto inexorably toward the rift despite his struggles. The golden energy surrounding him intensified, taking on a definite shape, the silhouette of enormous wings extending from his back. A long tail, a reptilian head. What's happening to him? Sakura cried. His chakra is resonating with the rift, Kakashi realized. They're synchronized somehow. Naruto felt his feet leave the ground as the tendrils pulled him upward. Panic surged through him, not of the creature or even the rift, but of being separated from his home, his friends. I'm not going anywhere, he shouted, focusing all his will into resisting the pull. The golden aura around him pulsed brighter, pushing back against the purple tendrils. For a moment, it seemed he might break free. Then, from within the rift, a second voice spoke, older, deeper, filled with ancient malice. The fragment resists. Increase extraction parameters. Fresh tendrils erupted from the tear, these glowing with blood-red light. They pierced through Naruto's golden aura as if it were mist, wrapping around his throat, chest, and limbs. Pain lanced through him, not physical but existential, as something fundamental to his being was being torn apart and reassembled. Naruto! Sakura screamed, hurling herself against the barrier again and again, her fists leaving distortions in the air that healed almost instantly. Within his mind, Kurama's power surged forward. Use my chakra, all of it. Naruto reached for the familiar power of the nine tails, but it slipped through his mental grasp like water through fingers. The red tendrils pulsed, and Naruto felt his consciousness beginning to fragment. Something's wrong, he gasped. Can't focus. The golden aura flickered, dimming as the red tendrils tightened their grip. Naruto found himself being drawn inexorably toward the rift, now mere meters away. He could see through it, glimpses of an alien landscape, mountains unlike any in the shinobi world. And what appeared to be massive skeletons half buried in fertile soil. If we can't stop it, I'm going with him, Sakura declared, gathering chakra for another assault on the barrier. Kakashi caught her arm. No, we don't know what's on the other side. We need to. A pulse of energy from the rift cut him off, knocking everyone except Naruto to the ground. The blow. ND Shinobi now hung suspended before the tear in reality, red and purple tendrils binding him completely, only his face still visible. I'll find a way back, Naruto shouted to his friends, determination blazing through the pain. I promise. With those words, the tendrils yanked him backward through the rift, which sealed itself with a thunderous boom that shook the entire Hokage monument. Silence fell across the stone faces, broken only by the sound of Sakura's fist slamming into the ground with enough force to create a small crater. Damn it, she cried, tears streaming down her face. We couldn't do anything. Shikamaru was already on his feet, mind racing through possibilities. We need to analyze everything we just witnessed. The rift's energy signature, those tendrils, the Bari, properties, anything that might help us re-establish contact or create our own passage. It spoke to him, Ino said shakily, wiping blood from her upper lip. And Naruto understood. It called him Orsted Fragment, Kakashi added. Does that mean anything to anyone? Silence greeted his question. We should inform Lady Tsunade, Sakura said finally, composing herself with visible effort. Quote, she was running tests on Naruto's blood samples. Maybe they'll tell us something useful. Kakashi nodded. Agreed. Sai, create an aerial surveillance network over Konoha. I want any new rift appearances detected instantly. Ino, coordinate with the Yamanaka clan to establish a village-wide sensory barrier. Shikamaru, I need probability models for rift appearances based on the data we have. What about me? Sakura asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Work with Lady Tsunade, Kakashi directed. If anyone can make sense of Naruto's physiological changes, it's you two. As the team dispersed to their assignments, Kakashi remained behind, staring at the spot where the rift had been. Something about that voice, the one that had called Naruto an Orsted Fragment, it had carried weight beyond mere sound. As if reality itself had bent to accommodate its speech. What have you gotten yourself into this time, Naruto? He murmured to the empty air. Pain, disorientation, the sensation of being simultaneously compressed to the size of an atom and stretched across infinite space. Naruto screamed, but no sound emerged in the non-space between dimensions. The tendrils still bound him, pulsing with alien energy that seemed to probe his very soul. Images flashed before his mind's eye too quickly to comprehend. Mountains of impossible height, oceans that flowed upward. Creatures of terrifying beauty and elegant horror. Naruto. Kurama's voice reached him through their mental link, though strangely distorted. Your chakra is destabilizing. You need to. The fox's words cut off suddenly as a new presence entered Naruto's consciousness. Ancient beyond reckoning, vast beyond comprehension, it regarded the shinobi with what felt like mild curiosity. So small, it observed. So fragmented, yet the essence remains. Who are you? Naruto attempted to ask, though his words had no sound in this place. The question lacks meaning in this context, the presence replied. I am an echo, as are you. Memory given function. Naruto struggled to make sense of the communication. What do you want from me? Again, incorrect framing. There is no wanting, only necessary convergence. The cycle attempts completion. Asterisk. Before Naruto could respond, the red tendrils constricted sharply, eliciting a silent scream of agony. He felt something tearing inside him, not physical, but essential to his being. His consciousness began to fracture, memories scattering like leaves in a storm. In desperation, he reached for Kurama's chakra once more, and this time made contact. The familiar power of the nine tails surged through him, momentarily stabilizing his fragmented mind. "We're being pulled apart," Kurama growled, his voice weakening. This passage was not meant for joined entities. "What does that mean?" Naruto asked, panic rising. "It means..." The fox's explanation vanished as reality reasserted itself with brutal suddenness. The non-space between dimensions collapsed, and Naruto found himself falling through open air, the tendrils gone, nothing but blue sky above and green forest below. "Shit," he yelled, wind whistling past his ears as the ground rushed toward him. Instinctively, he formed a cross-shaped hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Nothing happened. Shadow Clone Jutsu. He tried again desperately, only to receive the same result. No familiar puff of smoke, no duplicate Narutos appearing to break his fall. The treetops loomed closer. In a last-ditch effort, Naruto reached for the strange golden energy he'd manifested earlier. It responded sluggishly, a thin aura forming around his body moments before he crashed through the forest canopy. Branches snapped beneath him, slowing his descent somewhat, but not enough to prevent a bone-jarring impact with the forest floor. Pain exploded through his body, and darkness claimed his consciousness. Dreams of scale and flame and endless sky. Memories that weren't his, or were they? A battle spanning continents, powers that could reshape reality, hatred that transcended millennia. "You cannot escape the cycle, Dragon God. We are bound until the end of time." Asterisk. The voice was beautiful and terrible, belonging to a being shaped like a man but radiating divinity. Around them, a world burned. "Then I shall ensure your defeat in every iteration," Naruto heard himself respond. Though the voice was deeper, older, filled with a weariness born of countless lifetimes. "Until time itself surrenders to entropy." The scene shifted. A ritual chamber, glowing sigils. The sensation of being torn apart, not physically, but on a level beyond flesh. Scattering, fragmenting, preserving essential self through dispersion. One fragment falling toward a world of shinobi and tailed beasts. "Sleep within the child of prophecy," a voice whispered. "When the worlds align once more, awaken." Naruto's eyes snapped open, a gasp tearing from his throat as consciousness returned with painful clarity. He lay on his back, staring up at a patchwork of leaves and sky. Every muscle ached, and his chakra network felt raw, as if overloaded with unfamiliar energy. "Kurama," he called mentally, reaching for the familiar presence of the nine tails. Silence answered him. "Kurama." He tried again, panic rising as he delved into his mindscape, only to find it transformed. The vast chamber that had housed the fox was empty, the great gates that once held the seal gone. In their place was a swirling vortex of golden energy, pulsing with patterns that hurt his eyes to look upon directly. Naruto retreated from his mindscape, heart pounding. "What happened to you?" No answer came. For the first time since learning to communicate with the nine tails, Naruto was truly alone in his own mind. Forcing down his rising dread, he took stock of his situation. His body seemed intact despite the fall, though covered in scratches and bruises. His orange and black jumpsuit was torn in several places but still serviceable. The forest around him was unfamiliar, the trees larger than those near Konoha, with strange purple-tinged leaves and bark that seemed to shimmer slightly in the dappled sunlight. "Definitely not the land of fire," he muttered, climbing gingerly to his feet. A rustle in the underbrush caught his attention. Naruto turned, automatically reacting for a kunai that wasn't there. His weapons pouch had apparently been lost during the dimensional transit. "Great," he grumbled, falling into a defensive taijutsu stance instead. "Just perfect." The rustling grew louder, and then a creature emerged from the foliage, superficially resembling a rabbit, but with 6 ears arranged in a crown-like pattern and crystalline growths protruding from its spine. It regarded Naruto with intelligent purple eyes, nose twitching curiously. Hello, Naruto offered, relaxing slightly. The rabbit thing didn't seem aggressive. The creature tilted its head, then opened its mouth and emitted a high-pitched sound that made Naruto wince. A moment later, answering calls echoed from the surrounding forest, and within seconds, a dozen more of the rabbit creatures had appeared, forming a semicircle around the shinobi. Okay, so you travel in packs, Naruto said nervously. That's good to know. The first rabbit creature approached cautiously, etching out its neck to sniff at Naruto's sandals. Apparently satisfied with whatever scent it detected, it hopped closer and reared up on its hind legs, placing tiny paws against Naruto's shin. Friendly little guy, aren't you? Naruto smiled, starting to kneel down. The creature's crystalline spine suddenly glowed with blue light, and a jolt of electricity shot up Naruto's leg, sending him stumbling backward with a yelp of pain. The other rabbit things tensed, their own spines beginning to glow in various colors: red, green, yellow, purple. Hey, what was that for? Naruto demanded, shaking his numbed leg. The rabbit creatures began to advance as one, their previously cute appearance now menacing as energy crackled along their spines. I don't want to hurt you, Naruto warned, backing away slowly. He tried again to gather chakra for a shadow clone jutsu, but the energy slipped away like water through a sieve, refusing to take the familiar shape. The lead rabbit thing lunged, in glowing blue-white with electrical energy. Acting on instinct, Naruto sidestepped and countered with a sweeping kick that sent the creature flying into a nearby bush. The others paused, reassessing this new threat. Taking advantage of their hesitation, Naruto turned and sprinted deeper into the forest, dodging between massive tree trunks and leaping over tangled roots. Behind him, high-pitched calls signaled pursuit. Just what I needed, he panted as he ran. Killer rabbits with lightning powers. Without Kurama's chakra or his own jutsu, Naruto knew he was at a significant disadvantage. He needed to find civilization, or at least somewhere defensible until he could figure out what had happened to his abilities. The forest floor began to slope upward, and Naruto adjusted his course. To follow what appeared to be a game trail. The calls of the rabbit creatures grew fainter behind him, suggesting they'd either lost his trail or given up the chase. After 15 minutes of steady climbing, the trees thinned, revealing a rocky outcropping that offered a view of the surrounding landscape. Naruto paused to catch his breath, then climbed to the highest point for a better vantage. What he saw stole the air from his lungs. The forest stretched for kilometers in all directions, a vast sea of purple-tinged green. To the north, impossibly tall mountains pierced the clouds, their peaks shrouded in what appeared to be perpetual storm systems. To the east, the forest gave way to grasslands, and in the far distance, the glint of what might be a river or lake. But it was the west horizon that truly captured Naruto's attention. There, hanging in the sky like a second sun, was a colossal red planet, close enough that surface features were visible to the naked eye. Cloud systems swirled across its face, and what looked like massive impact craters dotted its surface. The planet was easily 20 times the size of the moon as viewed from Earth, dominating that portion of the sky with its crimson presence. Definitely not my world, Naruto whispered, awe and fear mingling in his voice. A distant roar drew his attention to the southern horizon, where a massive shape moved above the forest canopy, something with wings that spanned at least 100 meters, its serpentine body gleaming with scales that caught the sunlight like polished metal. Dragon. The word came to Naruto unbidden, accompanied by a strange sense of recognition, as if he were seeing a long-lost relative. Dragon child. The creature from the rift had called him that. And in his dreams, Dragon God. The golden energy within him stirred at the thought, resonating with something deep and ancient in his core. Naruto pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the unfamiliar power pulse beneath his palm. What am I? He murmured to the empty air. The only answer was the cry of an alien bird somewhere in the forest below. Taking one last look at the impossible vista before him, Naruto turned his attention to more immediate concerns. He needed water, food, and shelter, the basics of survival that Jiraiya had drilled into him during their years of training together. The thought of his late enter brought a pang of homesickness so acute it was physically painful. Would he ever see Konoha again? Sakura, Kakashi, all his friends. Don't think like that, he told himself firmly. There's always a way. If I got here, I can get back. With renewed determination, Naruto made his way down from the outcropping, scanning the forest for signs of water. A faint gurgling sound to the east caught his attention, a stream or small river. Following the sound, he soon came upon a clear brook meandering through the forest. The water looked clean, but Naruto approached cautiously, remembering the seemingly harmless rabbits. He knelt by the bank, examining the water for any signs of danger before cupping his hands and bringing some to his lips for a cautious taste. It was water, nothing more. Slightly sweet, but otherwise normal. Relieved, Naruto drank deeply, then splashed his face, washing away dirt and dried sweat. As he straightened, a flicker of movement on the opposite bank caught his eye. Naruto froze, then slowly reached for a sturdy branch lying nearby, not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. A figure emerged from the underbrush, humanoid but definitely not human. Standing upright on two legs, it resembled a bipedal lioness, complete with tawny fur, feline features, and a long tail that twitched alertly behind it. Most surprisingly, it wore clothing, a simple leather harness that supported a sheathed sword across its back, and what appeared to be armored bracers on its forearms. The lion person stared at Naruto with intelligent amber eyes, ears flattened slightly. Why in what might have been surprise or wariness? For a long moment, neither moved. Then, to Naruto's shock, the creature spoke in a distinctly feminine voice. You are not from the forest tribes, shish. He said in a language that Naruto somehow understood perfectly, despite knowing it wasn't any tongue spoken in the shinobi world. Yet you are not fully human either. What are you? Naruto blinked, mind racing. The creature could talk. More importantly, he could understand her, just as he had understood the voice from the rift. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, he replied cautiously. I'm lost. He lion woman's tail twitched skeptically. Lost as a state of direction. You smell of something else entirely. Something old. Her hand moved to the hilt of her sword. Are you one of the summoned? A servant of the mages? I don't know what that means, Naruto admitted. I was brought here against my will through a tear in the air. From another world. The lion woman's ears perked up at this. A teleportation circle accident, or perhaps a summoning ritual gone awry. She studied him more closely, nostrils flaring as she scented the air. You have no magic tool that I can see, yet there is power in you. Strange power. I'm a shinobi, Naruto explained, deciding that honesty was his best approach. Where I come from, we use chakra, a combination of physical and spiritual energy, to perform techniques. But since arriving here, I haven't been able to access it properly. Shinobi, the lion woman repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. And chakra, I know not these terms. She seemed to come to a decision. Her posture relaxing slightly. I am Ghislaine Dedoldia, hunter of the forest ward. You are within the territories of my pride. Naruto lowered the branch he'd been holding. I mean no harm to you or your pride. I'm just trying to figure out where I am and how to get home. Ajia's whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. Where you are is the great forest of Greyrat, on the continent of the Central Nations. As for how to return to your world, such knowledge is beyond forest dwellers like myself. You would need to seek the mages of Ranoa, perhaps, or the divine practitioners in Milis. None of these names meant anything to Naruto, but the mention of people who might understand dimensional travel gave him hope. How far are these places? He asked. Ranoa lies many weeks' journey to the north, Ajiya replied. Milis is further still, across the sea to the west. Naruto's heart sank. Without his abilities, such journeys would be incredibly dangerous. Out in an unfamiliar world filled with creatures like the electric rabbits, or worse. Ajiya studied his crestfallen expression. You truly are lost, she observed, her voice softening slightly. And without provisions or weapons. In a forest that devours the unprepared. She seemed to weigh something in her mind before continuing. My pride's settlement lies half a day's walk from here. Our elder might know more of your situation. If you wish, you may accompany me there. Naruto's spirits lifted. Really? That would be great. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Ajiya warned. The elder may simply decide to eat you. Naruto's smile faltered. You're joking, right? The lion woman's amber eyes revealed nothing. Follow me if you wish. Stay here if you prefer. The night beasts will emerge when the sun touches the red planet. They are always hungry for strange meat. Without waiting for a response, she leapt across the brook in a single fluid movement that spoke of impressive physical prowess. Then continued past Naruto into the forest. After a moment's hesitation, Naruto followed. Mysterious pride elders still seemed preferable to night beasts, whatever those might be. As they walked, Naruto attempted to learn more about this strange world. So, your people are all lion-like. My tribe is of the lion blood, yes, Agia confirmed. There are many beast tribes in the Great Forest: wolf, tiger, panther, bear, fox. Each keeps to their own territory, though we trade and occasionally mate with compatible bloodlines. And humans. There are normal humans here too. Agia glanced at him sidelong. Human nations dominate much of the world beyond the forest. They are numerous but individually weak, relying on magic tools and group tactics to compensate. Her tone sugges. She didn't hold humans in particularly high regard. I'm guessing relations aren't great between beast tribes and humans. Naruto ventured. They hunt us for our hides and mana crystals, Agia stated matter-of-factly. We hunt them when they trespass in our lands. It is the way of things. Naruto winced. Not exactly peaceful coexistence. You said I smell old, he said, changing the subject. What did you mean by that? Agia's pace slowed slightly. Beast tribes perceive more than humans. Scents carry history, power, lineage. You smell of something ancient. Something that makes my fur stand on end, though I know not why. Quote. She glanced back at him, her amber eyes narrowed. It is the same scent that clings to dragon bones. Naruto nearly stumbled. Dragons. They're real here. They were, Agia corrected. The great dragons perished long ago, during the Age of Gods. Only their lesser descendants remain. Wyverns, drakes, serpents of the deep. The true dragons exist only in bone and legend. A chill ran down Naruto's spine as he recalled his dream. Dragon God. Do the legends say what happened to them? He asked carefully. They warred with the gods and each other until both were diminished, Agia replied. Or so our songs tell. The last true dragon died facing the human god in battle so terrible it reshaped the land. This was many thousands of years past. The information sent Naruto's mind racing. Could there be a connection between those ancient dragons and the energy now flowing through him? Between this human god and the entity that had called him an Orsted fragment. Their path began to climb a gentle slope, and Naruto realized the forest was changing subtly around them. The trees here showed signs of cultivation, branches pruned, underbrush cleared. Even what appeared to be primitive territorial markers carved into trunks. We approach the edge of our settlement, Agia announced. From here, you will be under guest song. Do you understand what this means? Naruto shook his head. It means you will neither harm nor steal from any of my pride, and in return, you will receive shelter and food for 3 days. After that, you must depart or negotiate extension through service. I understand, Naruto agreed readily. I won't cause any trouble. Agia made a rumbling sound that might have been skepticism or amusement. We shall see. The strange ones always bring change. Whether they intend it or not. They crested the hill, and Naruto got his first look at the beast tribe settlement. Spread throughout a natural clearing and extending up into the massive trees were dozens of structures, some built directly on the ground, others suspended between branches on multiple levels. Bridges of rope and wood connected the arboreal dwellings, creating a 3-dimensional community that utilized every available space. Beast people moved through the settlement, primarily lion folk like Agia, but Naruto spotted a few individuals who appeared to be from other tribes. Distinguished by different fur patterns or physical characteristics. All moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, even the children who played between the dwellings. Welcome to Sunmane, Agia said, gesturing toward the settlement, heart of the lion pride of the eastern forest. As they descended toward the village, Naruto noticed activity slowing as inhabitants caught sight of him. Warriors similar to Agia, both male and female, moved to intercept them, hands resting on weapons. Agia, what is this you bring to our home? Called a massive male lion person, his mane thick and dark. Body crisscrossed with battle scars. A stranger from beyond, Malgus, Aegea replied calmly. He claims to be from another world entirely. I have extended guest song. Murmurs spread through the gathering crowd. Naruto maintained a neutral stance, keeping his hands visible and his expression open. The last thing he needed was to appear threatening. Malgus approached, toe, ring over Naruto by at least 30 centimeters, his amber eyes suspicious. He smells wrong, like the old bones. Yes, Aegea agreed. That is why I bring him to the elder. The large warrior grunted reluctantly. Very well, but he goes bound. No, Aegea said firmly. Guest song prohibits binding. He walks free or not at all. Naruto was impressed by her adherence to what appeared to be an important cultural protocol. Especially given that she barely knew him. After a tense moment, Malgus stepped aside. On your head be it, Aegea. When the elder finishes with him, bring him to the communal fire. I would hear this tale of other worlds myself. The crowd parted reluctantly, allowing Aegea to lead Naruto into the heart of the settlement. Curious eyes followed them, some fearful, others merely intrigued. Children darted alongside their path, whispering and giggling before being shooed away by adults. Your people seem wary of outsiders, Naruto observed quietly. With good reason, Aegea replied. The last humans who entered our territory came with fire and steel, seeking mana crystals. We lost 3 hunters before driving them off. Naruto winced. I'm sorry to hear that. It is the way of the world. Aegea said without emotion. Predator and prey, strength and weakness. The forest teaches these lessons to all who dwell within it. They approached the largest structure in the settlement, a circular building constructed around the trunk of a massive tree, its entrance draped with colorful cloths decorated with unfamiliar symbols. The elder's dwelling, Aegea explained. Prepare yourself. Matriarch Celes sees much and speaks in riddles. Answer truthfully, for she will know if you lie. Naruto nodded, squaring his shoulders. After facing down Madara Uchiha and Kagaya Otsutsuki, how intimidating could one elderly lion person be? Aegea pushed aside the hanging cloths and led Naruto into a chamber dim with smoke from aromatic herbs burning in stone bowls. The circular room was lined with shelves containing books, scrolls, bones, crystals, and objects Naruto couldn't identify. At the center, seated on a cushion before a low table, was a lioness whose fur had faded to silver white with age. Despite her years, Matriarch Celes exuded a palpable aura of power. Her amber eyes, slightly clouded with cataracts, fixed on Naruto with unnerving precision. So, she said, her voice surprisingly deep and strong. The fragment has finally arrived. Naruto froze, the word sending a chill down his spine. Fragment. The same word the entity in the rift had used. You know what I am? He asked, tension thrumming through his body. The elder chuffed, a sound halfway between laughter and dismissal. I know what you carry, child. The question is, do you? She gestured to cushions opposite her. Sit, both of you. Aegea immediately complied, kneeling gracefully on a cushion. After a moment's hesitation, Naruto did the same. Celes studied him openly, her nostrils flaring as she scented the air. Interesting. The vessel is human, yet not entirely. Another power dwelled within you recently, something primal and vulpine. But it has been separated. Naruto's eyes widened. Kurama, you can sense what happened to him. The nine-tailed entity was torn from you during transition, Celes confirmed, surprising Naruto with her knowledge. Your bond was not anticipated by those who pulled you through the void. Can I get him back? Naruto asked urgently. Celes tilted her head. Perhaps. But that is not the question you should be asking, fragment bearer. What should I be asking, then? Naruto demanded, frustration beginning to seep into his voice. Why you were brought here? Why now? Why the ancient enemy stirs once more? The elder's gaze grew distant. The cycle accelerates. The confrontation approaches earlier than foretold. Aegea shifted uncomfortably beside Naruto. Elder, you speak of the old prophecies. The return of the gods. Not return, Celes corrected. They never left. They merely changed form, scattered their essence across dimensions to evade final death. Her eyes locked onto Naruto once more, as did the one whose fragment you carry. Naruto leaned forward. The dragon god, Orsted. A visible tremor ran through both Celes and Aegea at the name. You know it, Celes whispered. The fragment stirs within you already. I had dreams, Naruto admitted. Memories that aren't mine. Of battles with someone called the human god. Celes nodded slowly. Hitagami. The eternal enemy. The manipulator of fates. Her expression darkened. He whose touch brings ruin disguised as blessing. In my world, Naruto continued, a rift opened. A creature came through and called me, Dragon Child. Then another rift pulled me here. The servants of Hitagami detected your awakening, Celes explained. They sought to destroy you before the fragment fully integrated. Their failure brought you to us, an outcome they surely did not intend. But why me? Naruto asked, the question that had been haunting him since the first strange pulse of golden energy. Why would this dragon god fragment be inside me? Celes closed her eyes, as if listening to distant voices. The dragon god's final stratagem was dispersion. When defeat seemed inevitable, Orsted shattered his own essence, casting fragments across dimensions to worlds where Hitagami's influence was weak or non-existent. She opened her eyes, fixing Naruto with a penetrating stare. Your world was one such haven. The fragment sought a vessel of unusual potential, one whose spiritual capacity was already expanded beyond normal human limitations. The 9 tails, Naruto realized. I was a Jinchuriki from birth. My chakra coils were already adapted to contain a powerful entity. Precisely, Celes confirmed. The fragment slumbered within you, dormant until needed. Recent events in your world, great expenditures of power, perhaps, weakened the barriers keeping it suppressed. Naruto thought of the Fourth Great Ninja War, his battles with godlike enemies, mastering Kurama's power. Yeah, you could say that. And now the fragment awakens, Celes continued, triggering ripples across dimensions that Hitagami's servants detected. They attempted to destroy you, but succeeded only in bringing you to the world where the final confrontation was always destined to occur. Aegea, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. Elder, are you saying this outsider carries the essence of the dragon god himself? The destroyer of nations, the enemy of Hitagami, a fragment only, Celes cautioned. But yes, the power that sleeps within him could reshape our world, for good or ill. Naruto shook his head, overwhelmed. This is insane. I'm not some reincarnated god. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, shinobi of Konohagakure. I have friends, a home, dreams of my own. Yet you bear the burden nonetheless, Celes said, not unkindly. The question remains, what will you do with it? I want to go home, Naruto stated firmly. I need to find a way back to my world. Celes exchanged a glance with Aegea. That may not be possible. At least, not immediately. What? Why not? The pathways between dimensions have been disturbed by your arrival, the elder explained. It will take time for them to stabilize enough for safe passage. Attempting to return now would likely destroy you, and possibly both worlds in the process. Naruto's heart sank. How long? A year. Perhaps more. Celes raised a gnarled hand as Naruto began to protest. This cannot be rushed, fragment bearer. The cosmos has rhythms that even gods must respect. A year, Naruto echoed hollowly. A year away from everything and everyone he knew. A year in a strange world with powers he didn't understand. In that time, Celes continued, you must learn to control the fragment's power. If Hitagami's servants found you once, they will do so again. Without mastery of your abilities, you will not survive their next attempt. How am I supposed to do that? Naruto demanded. I can't even use my normal chakra techniques anymore. Your original power and the fragment are reconfiguring each other. Celes explained. Like rivers merging, there is turbulence before a new flow emerges. You must be patient. Naruto took a deep breath, forcing down his frustration. Fine. Where do I start? With basics. Celes replied simply. Meditation. Focus. Physical conditioning. The fragment's power responds to different stimuli than your chakra did. She glanced at Aegea. My granddaughter will assist your training. Aegea's tail twitched in what might have been surprise. Elder, you found him for a reason, child, Celes said with finality. Your paths are now entwined. The warrior lioness inclined her head in reluctant acceptance. As you wish, grandmother. Naruto looked between them, recognizing that he had little choice but to accept their help. Thank you, both of you. Celes nodded sagely. Rest now. Eat. Tomorrow, your training begins. Her amber eyes locked with his, deadly serious. And fragment bearer, when Hidegami's servants come again, and they will, be ready. The fate of more than one world may depend on it. As Naruto followed Agia from the Elder's dwelling, his mind raced with everything he'd learned. Dragon God fragments, dimensional barriers, ancient enemies and cosmic battles. And somewhere, in another dimension, Kurama was missing, and his friends were undoubtedly searching for him, perhaps facing dangers from these rifts themselves. I will find a way back, he promised silently, and I'll master this power, whatever it takes. The red planet hung low on the horizon now, bathing Sunmane in crimson twilight. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new training, new discoveries about the power sleeping within him. Tonight, Naruto Uzumaki, shinobi of Konoha and unwitting vessel of a dragon god fragment, would prepare himself for the battles to come. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, The Sword and the Fox. Dawn broke over Sunmane's settlement with a kaleidoscope of colors unfamiliar to Naruto's eyes, the strange purple-tinged HT filtering through the forest canopy created patterns of lavender and crimson that danced across the wooden dwellings. Naruto sat cross-legged on a flat stone at the village's eastern edge, eyes closed. Attempting to meditate as Celes had instructed the previous night. Focus inward, she had told him. Not on your chakra paths, but deeper. Beneath the foundation of what you know as your power. Easier said than done. For years, Naruto had trained to harness and direct his chakra through specific pathways. Now, trying to bypass those familiar routes felt like attempting to write with his non-dominant hand, awkward, frustrating, and yielding poor results. Your breathing is uneven, Agia observed from where she stood a few paces away, arms crossed over her leather-armored chest. The fragment's energy responds to rhythm. Find the pulse beneath your heartbeat. Naruto cracked open one eye. I've been trying for an hour. Maybe we should try a different approach. The lioness warrior's tail flicked dismissively. Impatience breeds failure. Continue. Suppressing a sigh, Naruto closed his eye again. Patience had never been his strongest quality, but he recognized the necessity. Without access to his usual abilities, he was vulnerable in this dangerous world. The memory of those electric rabbit creatures was enough motivation to keep trying. Instead of forcing the meditation, Naruto allowed his awareness to expand gradually, taking note of each sensation, the cool morning air against his skin, the distant sounds of the beast tribe village stirring to life, the earthy scent of the forest floor beneath him. Gradually, he turned that awareness inward, moving past the familiar paths where chakra once flowed freely. There, a subtle current beneath everything else. Not blue like chakra, but golden. Thrumming with a resonance that reminded him of natural energy but felt vastly different in quality. As his consciousness brushed against it, images flashed through his mind, stars exploding into existence. Mountains rising from primordial seas, wings spanning continents. Naruto gasped, his eyes snapping open as golden light briefly suffused his skin. Agia's ears perked forward with interest. You found something. It's enormous, Naruto managed, his voice hushed with awe. Like an ocean underneath a puddle. I barely touched it, and it responded, she finished, nodding. The fragment recognizes its vessel's attention. What exactly am I supposed to do with it? Naruto asked, rising to his feet and brushing dirt from his tattered jumpsuit. Learn to draw upon it in controlled amounts. Agia explained. The elder believes that unlike your chakra, which you pushed outward through specific channels, this power must be invited to rise through you. Naruto frowned. Invited? How do you invite energy? Intent. Visualization. Will. Agia tapped her clawed finger against her chest. Dragons did not force their power through rigid pathways as your shinobi do. Their magic was their essence, an extension of their being. That's not very specific, Naruto grumbled. Which is why we begin with practical applications, Agia replied, a hint of anticipation in her voice. The hunting party leaves at midday. You will accompany us. Naruto blinked in surprise. You're taking me hunting. I thought we were training. We are, Agia said, her amber eyes glinting. Necessity is the finest teacher. When facing danger, instinct often succeeds where instruction fails. The implication wasn't lost on Naruto. So you're hoping if something tries to eat me, I'll figure out how to use this power. Precisely. The faintest suggestion of a smile crossed Ajia's feline features. Fear not, I will ensure you survive, probably. Before Naruto could respond, a commotion near the center of the settlement caught their attention. Raised voices and the sound of something heavy being dragged across the ground drew them toward the main gathering area. A hunting party had returned. But something was clearly wrong. 4 warriors dragged the carcass of a massive creature, vaguely reptilian with 6 limbs and a wedge-shaped head, while others supported 2 injured comrades. What happened? Ajiya demanded, moving immediately to examine the wounded hunters. Northern Territory, replied a grizzled male warrior, blood matting the fur on his arm. We tracked the chitin back as instructed, but found something else instead. It came from nowhere, added a younger female, whose leg had been badly lacerated. Fast as lightning, twice the size of any forest predator. Killed ran before we could react. Naruto felt a chill at the mention of death. What kind of creature was it? The warriors looked at him with suspicion, but Ajiya nodded permission to answer. Not forest-born, the male warrior growled. Smelled wrong. Like the burning stones that sometimes fall from the sky. Its claws passed through Mana's shields as if they weren't there, the female added. And it spoke, though none could understand its words. Naruto and Ajiya exchanged a significant glance. It sounded disturbingly like the dimensional rifts might be appearing in this world as well. Where exactly did you encounter this beast? Ajiya asked, her voice deadly serious. The crystal pools, half a day's journey north, replied the male warrior. We wounded it, but it fled deeper into forbidden territory. Murmurs spread through the gathering crowd. Naruto noticed the atmosphere had shifted from concern to palpable fear. What's in the forbidden territory? He asked Ajiya quietly. The ancient battleground, she replied, her voice equally low. Where the dragon god fell. No beast tribe enters those lands. They are poisoned with old magic and strange creatures. The elder emerged from her dwelling, leaning on a staff carved from white wood. The crowd parted immediately to let her approach the returning hunting party. Speak, Torin, she commanded the male warrior. Tell me exactly what you saw. As Torin described the encounter in greater detail, Celis's expression grew increasingly grim. When he mentioned a tear in the air, preceding the creature's appearance, her eyes snapped to Naruto. It has begun, she said, just loudly enough for those nearby to hear. The barriers between worlds weaken. The human god tests our defenses. She turned to address the entire gathering. Double the wardens on all approaches to the settlement. No one hunts alone. Children remain within the village boundaries. The beast tribe members dispersed quickly to carry out her instructions. The practiced efficiency suggesting they had faced dangers before. Celis beckoned to Ajiya and Naruto. The midday hunt is cancelled. You two will accompany me to my dwelling. We must accelerate our plans. Quote, once inside the elder's smoky dwelling, Celis moved with surprising speed, pulling ancient scrolls and crystalline objects from various shelves. The timing is worse than I feared, she muttered, unrolling a yellowed map across her low table. The convergence should not have begun for another cycle of the Red Planet. What convergence? Naruto asked, KN. Eeling beside the map, a detailed rendering of what appeared to be the surrounding region, with the forbidden territory clearly marked by ominous symbols. The dimensional alignment that allows travel between worlds. Celis explained impatiently. It occurs approximately once every 300 years. The last was barely a century ago, far too soon for another. Unless something forced it, Ajiya suggested, studying the map with narrowed eyes. Precisely. Celis placed a crystalline orb on the map, directly over the forbidden territory. Hidegami's servants seek to accelerate the cycle. Ey know the fragment has returned and wish to eliminate it before it can fully awaken. By sending monsters through rifts. Naruto frowned. They tried that in my world too. Scouts, Celis corrected. Seekers designed to detect the fragment's energy signature. Once they confirm your location, something far worse will follow. Naruto felt a familiar determination rising within him. Then we need to stop them before they can report back. Yes, Celis agreed. But you are not ready. Your control of the fragment is rudimentary at best. So what do we do? Ajiya asked. Celis traced a claw along the map, following the path from Sunmane to the crystal pools. We need help from one who understands both magic and combat. Fortunately, such a one may be within reach. Her claw stopped at a point just beyond the crystal pools. The Sword King passes through our territory every autumn, following the migration of mana beasts. If my calculations are correct, she should be near the northern border now. Sword King, Naruto repeated. Ghislaine Dedoldia, Agia explained, her voice tinged with respect. The strongest swordswoman of the beast tribes. A warrior of such skill that even human nations acknowledge her power. And more importantly, Celes added, one who has faced servants of Hitagami before and survived. Naruto nodded, understanding the plan. So we find this Sword King, warn her about the rifts, and ask for her help in tracking the creature. You and Agia will go, Celes confirmed. I must remain to strengthen the settlement's protective wards. With dimensional barriers weakening, old dangers may stir. She fixed Naruto with a penetrating gaze. You must continue attempting to access the fragment's power along the way. The journey to find Ghislaine will take you perilously close to the forbidden territory. If the Seeker detects your presence, we'll handle it, Naruto assured her with more confidence than he felt. Without his usual abilities, as essentially a civilian with good taijutsu skills, not nearly enough to face interdimensional threats. Celes nodded gravely. Prepare yourselves. You leave within the hour. The forest changed as they traveled northward. The purple-tinged vegetation gradually giving way to massive trees with iridescent blue bark and leaves that chimed softly in the breeze. Agia moved through the underbrush, with the silent grace of a natural predator, while Naruto followed, attempting to mimic her careful footfalls. They had been traveling for several hours, maintaining a brisk pace that Naruto might Avenue found challenging even with his shinobi conditioning. The beast tribes clearly possessed physical capabilities beyond ordinary humans. We approach the crystal pools, Agia announced, pausing atop a moss-covered log to scent the air. Be vigilant. If the Seeker still lurks nearby, it will sense you before we see it. Great, Naruto muttered, scanning the surrounding forest with heightened alertness. Any advice on fighting something that can ignore mana shields? Move faster than its claws, Agia replied dryly. And pray to whatever gods you worship that the Sword King is indeed in the vicinity. They continued forward more cautiously, Agia occasionally stopping to examine tracks or broken vegetation. The forest grew quieter the further they traveled, the usual backdrop of animal sounds fading to an unnerving silence. Nothing hunts here now, Agia observed. The local fauna have fled the Seeker's presence. Naruto nodded, his senses, honed by years of combat, picking up the same wrongness in the air. How much further to the crystal pools? Just beyond the next ridge, Agia replied, gesturing toward a gentle rise ahead. We should observe from concealment first. They approached the ridge in a low crouch, using the abundant underbrush as cover. Upon reaching the crest, Naruto understood why the area was named as it was. Below stretched a series of interconnected pools, their waters so clear they appeared almost invisible except where they reflected the sky. Surrounding each pool were crystalline formations in various colors, azure, emerald, amber, violet, that emerged from the ground like the teeth of some enormous beast. The crystals pulsed with soft light, casting prismatic patterns across the clearing. Mana crystals, Agia whispered. The largest natural formation in the great forest. They draw magical energy from deep within the earth. They're beautiful, Naruto breathed, understanding why humans might risk hunting beast tribes for such treasures. And dangerous, Agia added. The energies here are unpredictable. Some say these crystals grow from the bones of lesser dragons who fell in ancient battles. Naruto scanned the clearing carefully. I don't see any sign of the creature the hunting party described. Nor I, Agia agreed, her amber eyes narrowing as she studied the area. Yet something is wrong. The crystals should be pulsing in harmony. But their rhythm is disturbed. Now that she mentioned it, Naruto could see that some crystals glowed brighter than others, their illumination out of sync with those nearby. The pattern created a visual dissonance that was subtly disturbing. Could that be caused by a dimensional rift? He asked. Perhaps. Agia's ears swiveled, tracking sounds Naruto couldn't detect. We should. A thunderous crack split the air, so loud it sent birds erupting from trees a kilometer away. One of the largest crystal formations had fractured, a spiderweb of fissures spreading across its emerald surface. Move, Agia shouted, grabbing Naruto's arm and pulling him back from the ridge. Not a moment too soon. The crystal exploded, sending lethal shards flying in all directions. Several embed themselves in the trees where they had been observing, the fragments hissing as they made contact with organic material. From the shattered remains of the crystal, something emerged, a creature so alien that Naruto's mind struggled to process its form. Vaguely humanoid but with proportions all wrong, it stood nearly 3 meters tall with limbs that bent in impossible directions. Its skin, if it could be called that, resembled polished obsidian that reflected the surrounding crystal light in nauseating patterns. Where a head should have been, a cluster of crystalline structures floated in rough formation, occasionally realigning themselves like a puzzle seeking solution. What the hell is that? Naruto whispered, instinctively dropping into a defensive stance. Not the seeker the hunting party described, Agia replied, drawing her sword with practiced ease. Something worse. The creature remained motionless for several seconds, the crystal cluster at its head rotating slowly as if scanning its surroundings. Then, with disturbing suddenness, it oriented directly toward their hiding place. Fragment detected. Asterisk, it announced in the same not language Naruto had heard from Th. Rift in Konoha. Sounds that should have been incomprehensible yet carried meaning directly to his mind. Extraction protocol initiated. It knows you're here, Agia hissed. We need to retreat. But retreat was no longer an option. The creature moved with explosive speed, covering the distance to the ridge in a single bound that defied natural physics. Its obsidian limbs elongated as it landed, stretching like liquid glass toward Naruto. Agia intercepted the attack, her sword slicing through one extended limb with a sound like breaking icicles. The severed portion shattered upon hitting the ground, the fragments dissolving into purplish mist. The creature showed no reaction to the injury. Its remaining limbs continued their advance while the severed one began to reform from the same purple mist. Physical attacks slow it, but don't stop it, Agia called to Naruto, executing a complex series of sword maneuvers that kept the creature's regenerating limbs at bay. Run. Find the Sword King. I'll hold it here. I'm not leaving you, Naruto retorted, grabbing a fallen branch as a makeshift weapon. He might lack his usual powers, but he was still a trained combatant. The Yours crystal cluster pulsed with intensifying light. Interference detected. Eliminating obstacle. A beam of coherent energy erupted from the crystal formation, aimed directly at Agia. She dodged with feline reflexes. But the beam seared across her shoulder, burning through leather armor and into flesh. The lioness warrior snarled in pain but maintained her defensive position. Naruto felt a familiar anger rising within him, the protective fury that had always emerged when his friends were in danger. Something responded to that emotion, stirring beneath his consciousness like a great beast awakening from slumber. Hey, he shouted, drawing the creature's attention. You want me? Come and get me. The crystal cluster rotated toward him. Primary target acquired. Resuming extraction. Naruto, don't, Agia warned, but it was too late. The creature abandoned its attack on Agia, all attention now fixed on Naruto. Its limbs retracted, reconfiguring into a more streamlined form clearly designed for pursuit. Naruto backed away, still clutching his makeshift weapon, mind racing for a strategy. He needed to tap into the fragment's power, but how? His earlier meditation had barely scratched the surface of the golden energy. As the creature lunged toward him, Naruto acted on instinct. Rather than attempting to shape chakra through familiar pathways, he reached inward to that ocean of golden power and simply asked, I need strength. Now. Asterisk. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, like a dam breaking, power surged through him, not the controlled flow of chakra, but a torrent of raw energy that illuminated his skin from within. The sensation was both exhilarating and terrifying, like grabbing a lightning bolt with bare hands. The creature hesitated, its crystal cluster vibrating rapidly. Power signature exceeding parameters. Recalibrating. That momentary pause was all Naruto needed. He channeled the golden energy into his makeshift staff, which began to glow with the same light that emanated from his body. When the creature resumed its attack, Naruto swung, not with the technical precision of a trained swordsman, but with the overwhelming force of a natural disaster. The branch, infused with golden energy, connected with the creature's crystal cluster. Upon impact, the makeshift weapon exploded in a blinding flash, sending both Naruto and the creature flying in opposite directions. Naruto slammed into a tree trunk, the breath knocked from his lungs. Through blurry vision, he saw the creature attempting to reassemble itself, the obsidian limbs flowing like tar toward the damaged crystal cluster. "It's reforming," Agia called, staggering toward Naruto with one hand pressed to her burned shoulder. "We need to destroy the crystals completely." "How?" Naruto wheezed, struggling to his feet. The golden energy had receded, leaving him feeling hollow and exhausted. Before Agia could answer, a new sound reached them, the rhythmic pounding of heavy footfalls approaching rapidly from the east. Both turned to see a blur of movement through the trees, too fast to track clearly. The creature sensed the new arrival as well. Its half-formed body oriented toward the approaching threat, crystal cluster pulsing with gathering energy. What happened next occurred so quickly that Naruto's eyes could barely follow. A massive figure burst from the forest edge, another beast tribe member. But unlike any Naruto had seen, powerfully built with the features of a lioness, she wore fitted armor that left her muscular arms bare. Most strikingly, she wielded an enormous sword nearly as long as she was tall, yet handled it as effortlessly as if it were a wooden training blade. The creature fired its energy beam at the newcomer, who deflected it with a precise angle of her sword, redirecting the beam into the ground. Without pausing, she continued her charge, sword tracing complex patterns that somehow left afterimages in the air, not illusions but tool distortions in space that converged on the creature from multiple angles simultaneously. Sword King detected. Threat level exceeding mission parameters. Initiating tactical withdrawal. The creature's form began to dissolve into purple mist, attempting to escape, but the swordswoman's blade moved faster. Each strike severed connections between the mist particles, preventing reformation. With a final overhead blow that split the crystal cluster in two, she ended the creature's existence. The fragments dissolved into nothingness, leaving only scorched earth where it had stood. The warrior straightened, flicking her massive blade to remove non-existent blood, a habitual gesture rather than a practical one. Then she turned toward Naruto and Agia, amber eyes assessing them with clinical detachment. "You were fortunate I was nearby," she stated, her voice deep and commanding. That was a mid-level executor construct, not something forest dwellers should face unprepared. Agia inclined her head respectfully. "Sword King Ghislaine, the elder foresaw your presence in the region. Celes always knows more than she should," Ghislaine replied with a hint of amusement. Her gaze fixed on Naruto. "This is not a beast tribesman, yet he wields power I have not encountered before." "Explain." Before Agia could respond, Naruto stepped forward. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm from another world, brought here through a dimensional rift. That thing was hunting me specifically." Ghislaine's ears twitched with interest. Another world. That would explain the strange mana signature. She sheathed her massive sword in one smooth motion. "And why would a construct of the ancient wars hunt you, Naruto Uzumaki?" "Because I apparently carry a fragment of something called the Dragon God," Naruto replied, deciding that directness was the best approach with this formidable warrior. "Elder Celes believes servants of someone named Hitagami are trying to eliminate me before I learn to use this power." At the mention of both names, Ghislaine's posture shifted subtly, a tightening of muscles, a narrowing of eyes. The reaction of someone who recognized dangerous information. "I see," she said after a measured pause. "That is significant and troubling." She turned to Agia. "Your wound requires treatment. The construct's energy is corrosive to living tissue." Agia nodded, visibly fighting pain. "We sought you specifically, Sword King. Elder Celes believes more rifts will appear, bringing dangers the beast tribes cannot face alone." "She is correct," Ghislaine confirmed. Avenue encountered two other dimensional anomalies in recent days. Strange creatures emerging, though none as dangerous as this executor. She glanced at Naruto. "Until now, I did not understand what they sought. Will you help us?" Naruto asked directly. Ghislaine considered him with those penetrating amber eyes. The dragon god and human god conflict is not a simple matter. Their war shaped, and nearly destroyed, our world once before. Quote, "I know this isn't my fight," Naruto acknowledged. "But I've been dragged into it anyway." I need to learn to control this power if I want any chance of returning to my own world. And if you awaken the Dragon God fragment fully, what then? Ghislaine challenged. The power to reshape reality is not a tool to be used lightly. I don't want to reshape reality, Naruto insisted. I just want to protect people, both in my world and this one, from whatever's coming through these rifts. Ghislaine studied him silently for several moments, as if looking beyond his words to something deeper. Finally, she nodded once. I will help you, Naruto Uzumaki. Not because I believe in prophecies or cosmic cycles, but because these rifts threaten all who dwell in the great forest, my home. Relief washed through Naruto. Having a warrior of Ghislaine's caliber as an ally significantly improved their chances against future threats. We should return to Sunmane, Agia suggested, wincing as she adjusted her position. The elder will want to hear of this encounter. First, we make camp, Ghislaine countered. Night approaches, and your wound needs treatment before traveling. Moreover, she added, glancing at Naruto, I wish to observe this Dragon God fragment in a controlled setting. Their camp was simple but defensible, a small clearing with good visibility. Backed against a natural stone outcropping, Ghislaine had treated Agia's wound with surprising gentleness, applying medicinal herbs from a pouch at her belt and binding the injury with clean cloth. Now, as twilight deepened into night and the red planet rose above the horizon, Naruto sat across from Ghislaine beside their small fire, conscious of her evaluating gaze. Tell me of your world, she requested, her tone suggesting it was more command than question. Naruto described the shinobi nations, chakra, and the recent war against Kagaya and Madara. He explained his status as a Jinchuriki and how Kurama had been separated during the dimensional transfer. Ghislaine listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as if confirming private theories. When he finished, she spoke at last. Your chakra system explains why the Dragon God fragment chose you as a vessel. Such a network would provide natural pathways for ancient power to integrate. Except I can't use my chakra properly anymore, Naruto pointed out, and I barely understand how to access the fragment's power. Because you are thinking like a shinobi, Ghislaine replied. Trying to force energy through specific channels. Dragon magic doesn't work that way. So I've been told, Naruto said with a hint of frustration. But no one can tell me exactly how it does work. Ghislaine considered this. Stand up, she ordered suddenly. Naruto complied, watching curiously as the Sword King rose as well, moving to a position a few meters away. Attack me, she instructed. With your strongest physical technique. Do not hold back. Are you sure? Naruto asked dubiously. Despite her impressive display against the crystal creature, he was still a trained shinobi with exceptional taijutsu skills. Ghislaine's expression didn't change. Attack. Now. Naruto shrugged and dropped into a fighting stance. If she wanted a demonstration, he'd oblige. He launched forward with his best combination, a fei NT to the left followed by a spinning kick designed to bypass standard guards. Ghislaine didn't move until the last possible moment. Then, with speed that left afterimages, she sidestepped the attack. While simultaneously striking Naruto's chest with an open palm. The blow sent him flying backward as if hit by one of Sakura's chakra-enhanced punches. He slammed into the stone outcropping hard enough to crack the rock. Stars exploding across his vision. Your physical abilities are impressive by human standards, Ghislaine observed calmly. But without your chakra enhancements, they are insufficient for the threats you will face. Naruto coughed, pushing himself up from the ground. Was knocking me into a rock wall really necessary to make that point? Yes, she replied simply. Because now you are angry, frustrated, and emotional states are the keys to dragon magic. Naruto paused, understanding dawning. You're saying the power responds to feelings, not hand signs or concentration. Precisely. Ghislaine approached, extending her hand to help him up. The ancient dragons did not cast spells or perform techniques. Their magic was an extension of their will and emotion. Rage became fire, serenity became healing. Curiosity became transformation. As Naruto accepted her hand, he felt a subtle shift in the golden energy within him, a resonance with Ghislaine's own power, though hers was fundamentally different in nature. You have fighting spirit, she noted with the faintest hint of approval. Now, attack again. But this time, Don't think about forms or stances. Focus on the emotion, the desire to strike, to protect, to prove yourself. Naruto nodded, centering himself. Rather than planning a specific attack sequence, he let instinct guide him, channeling his ration and determination into pure motion. As he moved, golden light began to shimmer across his skin, not the controlled manifestation of chakra but something wilder and more primal. Ghislaine still avoided his attack, but this time with visible effort, her eyes widening slightly as his speed and strength increased beyond normal human capabilities. Better, she acknowledged, countering with a strike of her own that Naruto partially deflected, golden energy cushioning the impact. The fragment responds to your fighting spirit, but you're still approaching it as something separate from yourself. What do you mean? Naruto asked, breathing heavily from the exertion. The fragment is not a tool to be used, Ghislaine explained. It is becoming part of you, integrating with your essence. You must stop thinking of dragon power as something you control and start experiencing it as something you are. From her position near the fire, Agia spoke up. The elder described it as rivers merging. Two becoming one. Ghislaine nodded. An apt metaphor. Your shinobi training taught you to see chakra as energy to be molded. Dragon magic as identity expressing itself through power. Naruto frowned, attempting to grasp the concept. So instead of using the power to do something, you become the power doing something, Ghislaine finished. The distinction is subtle but crucial. She drew her massive sword in a single fluid motion. Watch. The Sword King closed her eyes briefly, and when she reopened them, they glowed with amber light. The air around her sword distorted, not with chakra or visible energy, but as if reality itself bent slightly in its presence. I do not command the sword to cut, she explained. I become the concept of cutting itself. The sword is merely the physical expression of that truth. With a motion too quick to follow, she slashed at a nearby boulder. There was no visible energy, no dramatic effect, just the soft sound of displaced air. A moment later, the boulder separated into perfectly even halves, the cut surface smoother than polished glass. That's, Naruto struggled to find words. That's not just skill. That's something else entirely. It is sword ki, Ghislaine confirmed, sheathing her blade. Not magic as humans understand it, nor chakra as you describe. It is the warrior's spirit manifested through perfect unity of intent and action. And you think I can do something similar with this dragon fragment? I think, Ghislaine said carefully, that the fragment is attempting to teach you something far more profound than techniques or spells. It seeks to awaken your true nature, which may be more dragon than human, in ways you have yet to discover. The notion should have been disturbing, yet Naruto found himself strangely accepting of the possibility. After all, he'd spent most of his life sharing his body with a nine-tailed fox deity. The idea of having dragon aspects seemed almost tame by comparison. So how do I practice this, becoming? He asked. Tonight, rest, Ghislaine advised. Your body and spirit need time to process what has already begun. Tomorrow, we return to Sunmane, and then, Naruto prompted when she paused. Then I take you to the Sword Sanctum, Ghislaine decided. A place where warriors learn to transcend their limitations. If the fragment can be properly awakened anywhere, it would be there. Agia's ears perked up in surprise. The sanctum. No outsider has ever been permitted entry. These are unusual times, Ghislaine replied. And he is no ordinary outsider. As they settled for the night, Naruto lying on a bed of soft leaves while Ghislaine took first watch, he found his thoughts drifting to Konoha. Were his friends looking for him? Had more rifts appeared? Was Kurama safe? Wherever he might be, the golden energy pulsed gently within him, as if responding to his concerns. For a brief moment, Naruto had the distinct impression that it was trying to communicate, not with words, but with emotions and fragmented images. Home, cycle, return, patience, asterisk. The sensation was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving Naruto unsure whether he'd imagined it. But as sleep claimed him, one certainty remained. Whatever this power was, whatever he was becoming, he would master it. Not for power's sake, but because people in two worlds now depended on his success. Morning brought a discovery that left even Ghislaine visibly concerned. Where the crystal creature had fallen, the ground was wrong. Not burned or damaged in any conventional sense, but altered at a fundamental level. Plants grew at impossible angles, some with leaves that phased in and out of visibility. Small stones hovered several centimeters above the soil, orbiting invisible centers of gravity. Reality fracture, Ghislaine named it, keeping a cautious distance. The Executor's destruction released dimensional energy that warped local space-time. Will it spread? Aegea asked, eyeing the anomaly warily. Unknown, Ghislaine admitted, but similar phenomena have been documented near ancient battlegrounds. Some heal naturally, others persist for centuries. Naruto approached the edge of the affected area, feeling the golden energy within him responding to the distortion, not with alarm, but with something akin to recognition. I think, he began hesitantly, I think I can fix this. Both beast women turned to him with surprise. Such damage is beyond conventional healing, Ghislaine stated. It's not about healing, Naruto replied, struggling to articulate what he sensed. It's about restoring pattern. The fabric is torn, but the threads still exist. Following the strange certainty growing within him, Naruto extended his hand toward the distorted area. Rather than pushing energy outward as he would with chakra, he allowed the golden power to rise naturally, responding to his intent. Restore, mend, realign, asterisk. Golden light flowed from his palm, not as a beam or burst, but as intricately woven strands that spread across the distortion like a living net. Where the light touched, reality seemed to shiver, then settle back into proper alignment. Floating stones gently descended to the ground. Twisted plants straightened, their coloration returning to normal. The process lasted less than a minute, yet when it concluded, Naruto felt as if he'd run a marathon. The affected area was completely restored, not even a trace of the anomaly remained. Extraordinary, Ghislaine murmured, her usual stoicism momentarily replaced by genuine wonder. Even advanced space-time magic cannot repair dimensional fractures so completely. Naruto staggered slightly, light-headed from the exertion. Aegea moved quickly to support him before he could fall. That was intense, he managed, leaning gratefully on the lioness warrior. Like threading 1,000 needles simultaneously. You acted on instinct, Ghislaine observed. The fragment's knowledge guiding your actions. Naruto nodded. It was like remembering how to do something I've done countless times before, except I know I've never done it at all. The memories of the dragon god, Aegea suggested. Awakening within you, which makes your training even more urgent, Ghislaine concluded. Such abilities emerging unpredictably could be as dangerous as the rifts themselves. They broke camp efficiently and began the journey back to Sunmane. Ghislaine set a pace that would have been punishing for an ordinary human, but Naruto kept up without complaint, noticing that his physical stamina seemed enhanced even without consciously drawing on the fragment's power. As they traveled, Ghislaine asked detailed questions about Naruto's world, particularly its combat systems and how chakra compared to the magic of this world. In return, she provided information about the continent they were on, called the Central Nations, and the complex political landscape divided between human kingdoms, beast tribe territories, and various magical factions. The Ranoa kingdom to the north is the center of magical research, she explained as they crossed a narrow ravine. Their mags would likely understand the dimensional rifts better than anyone. Unfortunately, their interest would not stop at understanding. Meaning, Naruto asked. Meaning they would see you as a research subject, not a person. Ghislaine replied bluntly. The fragment you carry would be immensely valuable to them, worth any number of ethical compromises. Great, Naruto muttered. So I need to avoid curious mages along with interdimensional assassins. The Sword Sanctum will provide protection, Ghislaine assured him. It exists outside conventional political boundaries, respected by all major powers for its neutrality. By midday, they had covered more than half the distance back to Sunmane. Ghislaine called a brief halt at a small stream to rest and refill water containers. As Aegea moved upstream to check for any signs of danger, Ghislaine turned her full attention to Naruto. There is something I must ask, she said, her voice pitched low. Something the others need not hear. Naruto tensed slightly at her serious tone but nodded for her to continue. When the dragon god fragment fully awakens, Ghislaine said, what do you intend to do with that power? The directness of the question caught Naruto off guard. I haven't thought that far ahead. My focus is just on controlling it enough to find a way home. Ghislaine's amber eyes held his steadily. Power changes intentions, Naruto Uzumaki. I have seen it countless times. Warriors who begin with noble purposes often find those purposes, evolving once they taste true strength. You're worried I'll go power mad if I fully awaken this fragment. Naruto realized. The concern is valid, Ghislaine replied without apology. The original dragon god was not known for restraint or mercy. His battles with Hidegami scarred the world so deeply that some regions remain uninhabitable millennia later. Naruto considered her words carefully. In my world, I contained Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, an entity of enormous destructive power. Many feared I would lose control or be corrupted by his influence. And were you? No, Naruto said simply. Because I never saw Kurama's power as something to use against others. It was something we shared to protect what mattered to us both. He met Ghislaine's gaze directly. I don't know what the dragon god was like originally. But whatever this fragment becomes as part of me will reflect my will. Not the other way around. Ghislaine studied him for several long moments before the faintest suggestion of a smile touched her lips. Your conviction is genuine. Remarkable. Is that unusual? Naruto asked. More than you know, Ghislaine replied. Most who seek power have wounds they wish to heal or grievances they wish to avenge. Your desire to protect without dominating is refreshing. Before Naruto could respond, Agia returned, moving swiftly and with obvious concern. Riders approaching from the east, she reported. Human cavalry, heavily armed. At least 20 warriors. Ghislaine's expression hardened. Mercenaries are kingdom forces. No uniform standard, Agia replied. Likely mercenaries are bounty hunters. They follow a direct path toward Sunmane. That's not a coincidence, Naruto observed grimly. No, Ghislaine agreed, rising to her feet. If Hidegami's servants cannot reach you directly, they will employ human pawns against those who shelter you. She drew her massive sword. We must reach Sunmane before they do. Agia, take the high path through the canopy. Alert any hunting parties you encounter. The lioness warrior Deed and immediately scaled a nearby tree with incredible agility, disappearing into the upper branches. Ghislaine turned to Naruto. Now we see if yesterday's lessons bore fruit. We must move faster than human limitations allow. How? Naruto asked, already bracing himself for whatever she might suggest. Remember what I taught you about becoming rather than using, Ghislaine instructed. Draw. Gons did not run quickly, they were speed itself. Find that aspect within the fragment and embody it. Naruto closed his eyes, reaching inward to the golden energy. Rather than visualizing it as power to be channeled, he tried to perceive it as aspects of himself not yet realized. Within that vast ocean of potential, he sought the concept of swift movement, of distance conquered through perfect motion. Something responded, not with a surge of power, but with a shift in his perception. When he opened his eyes, the world seemed slightly altered, moving at a pace that felt more navigable, as if Elati had adjusted its tempo to match his need. I think I found something, he told Ghislaine, whose outline now seemed to shimmer slightly in his enhanced vision. Then let us see what a dragon's speed truly means, she replied. Her own form blurring as she activated whatever technique allowed her to move with such extraordinary velocity. What followed was unlike any movement Naruto had experienced before. Not the chakra-enhanced leaps of shinobi travel, but something more fundamental. His body moved through space with impossible efficiency, each step covering ground that should have required 3. The forest blurred around him as he kept pace with Ghislaine, who glanced back occasionally with what might have been approval in her amber eyes. They covered the remaining distance to Sunmane in less than an hour. Arriving at the settlement's edge just as plumes of smoke began rising from the northern approach. We're too late, Naruto realized with dawning horror. They've already attacked. Ghislaine's expression darkened. The attack is a distraction. Their true purpose will be to find you, or failing that, to eliminate those who might help you. She raised her sword, which began to gleam with a light similar to but distinct from Naruto's golden energy. Stay close. This day, you will see why they call me Sword King. Together, they raced toward the sounds of battle echoing from the village center. The scene that greeted them confirmed their worst fears. Armed humans in mismatched armor had breached the settlement's outer defenses, setting fire to several dwellings, while engaging beast tribe warriors in scattered combat throughout the village. The attack's superior numbers were partially offset by the beast tribe's natural fighting abilities, but the battle was as clearly turning against the defenders. Near the central gathering area, Naruto spotted Elder Celes surrounded by a protective circle of lion warriors, facing off against what appeared to be the mercenary leader, a tall human with an elaborate mechanized crossbow and a cold smile. "Find the outsider," the leader was shouting to his men. "The client pays triple for him alive, double for his head." "They're here for me," Naruto growled, golden energy beginning to shimmer around his body in response to his rising anger. "Control," Ghislaine cautioned, though her own battle aura was intensifying. "Channel the emotion. Don't let it consume you." Taking a deep breath, Naruto focused his rage into determination. The golden light stabilized, flowing around him like a second skin rather than erupting chaotically. Ghislaine nodded in approval. "I will engage the leader. You focus on protecting the non-combatants and supporting the defenders. Avoid killing if possible. These humans are pawns, not true enemies." Before Naruto could respond, she was gone, moving so quickly she seemed to teleport directly into the center of the conflict. Her arrival created an immediate shift in the battle. Dynamics. 3 mercenaries fell unconscious before they even registered her presence, struck with the flat of her blade with surgical precision. The leader spun to face this new threat, his mechanized crossbow raising automatically. "The Sword King," he snarled, recognition evident in his voice. "This explains much. Withdraw your forces," Ghislaine commanded, her sword held in a deceptively relaxed stance. "You trespass on protected territory." The man's laugh was ugly. "Protected? By what authority? The beast tribes hold no status under kingdom law." "By my authority," Ghislaine replied, her voice carrying across the clearing despite its even tone. "Which has proven sufficient for wiser men than you." While this confrontation unfolded, Naruto moved toward a group of mercenaries raiding a dwelling where children had taken refuge. Drawing on his taijutsu training and the enhanced speed he'd discovered earlier, he engaged them from behind, striking with precise blows aimed at disabling rather than killing. The golden energy responded to his protective intent, amplifying his strength and speed beyond what he'd managed previously. 4 mercenaries went down before the 5th even managed to turn, eyes widening at the sight of Naruto's glowing form. "It's him," the man shouted. "The Golden One, the client's target." His cry drew attention from other mercenaries, who immediately began converging on Naruto's position. This, at least, accomplished one goal, drawing them away from the beast tribe non-combatants. Naruto prepared to face this new wave of attackers when a familiar form landed beside him, Agia. Her sword bloodied but her movements still fluid despite her earlier injury. "You draw too much attention," she observed wryly. "That's kind of the point," Naruto replied, as they positioned themselves back to back. "Better they focus on me than innocent villagers." "A noble sentiment," Agia acknowledged. "Try not to die expressing it." The mercenaries encircled them, more cautious now after witnessing what Naruto could do. One raised a strange crystal-tipped rod that hummed with magical energy. "Mage support," Agia warned. They came prepared for supernatural threats. The mage pointed his rod at Naruto, and a spiraling beam of purplish energy shot forth, similar to but less refined than the executor construct's attack. Acting on instinct, Naruto raised his hand, the golden energy responding to form a shield-like barrier that absorbed the incoming spell. But rather than simply blocking the attack, Naruto felt the golden energy, consuming it. The purple energy spiraled into his shield, which pulsed brighter with each passing second. "What's happening?" he asked Agia without taking his eyes off the startled mage. "You're absorbing his mana," she replied, sounding impressed despite the dire situation. "A dragon trait. They feed on magical energy." The realization sparked an idea. If the fragment could absorb magic, perhaps. Naruto focused on the absorbed energy, willing it to transform rather than simply containing it. The golden shield morphed, compressing into a glowing sphere reminiscent of his Rasengan but composed entirely of converted magical energy. When the next wave of mercenaries charged, Naruto released the sphere toward the ground at their feet. It detonated on impact, releasing a concussive wave that threw the attackers backward without causing lethal damage. Effective, Aegea approved, taking advantage of the opening to disable 2 more mercenaries with quick sword strikes. The fragment adapts quickly to your fighting style. Across the clearing, Ghislaine had engaged the mercenary leader in what could only be described as an utterly one-sided confrontation. Despite his mechanized weaponry and obvious combat experience, he might as well have been standing still for all the success he had against the Sword King. Her blade moved in patterns that defied conventional swordsmanship, leaving aft rimages that seemed to confuse and disorient him. Enough games, the leader snarled finally, reaching for a crystal pendant hanging from his neck. The client provided insurance for this eventuality. Ghislaine's eyes narrowed. Stop. That crystal is too late. The man crushed the pendant in his fist, releasing a pulse of sickly green energy that expanded outward in a rapidly growing sphere. Where it touched mercenaries, they convulsed in obvious agony before collapsing. Where it touched beast tribe members, the effects were even more severe, fur and flesh beginning to wither on contact. Sacrificial field, Ghislaine shouted to Naruto, a forbidden technique that converts life force to destructive energy. Elder Celes was already acting, her frail hands weaving complex patterns that created a shimmering barrier around as many of her people as she could reach. But the sacrificial field expanded too quickly, threatening to engulf the entire settlement within seconds. Without conscious thought, Naruto rushed toward the epicenter where the mercenary leader stood, his body already deteriorating as the spell consumed him from within. The golden energy surged through Naruto with unprecedented intensity, responding to his desperate desire to protect everyone, beast tribe and mercenaries alike. As he reached the edge of the expanding green sphere, Naruto didn't attempt to block or deflect it. Instead, following the same instinct that had allowed him to repair the reality fracture, he extended both hands and commanded, "Absorb." The golden energy exploded outward from his body, meeting the sacrificial field in a clash of opposing forces. For a moment, it seemed the destructive spell would overwhelm him, the green energy pressing against his golden aura, forcing him to his knees under its terrible pressure. Then, drawing on every lesson Ghislaine had shared about becoming rather than using power, Naruto stopped fighting the sacrificial field and instead embraced it. Rather than pushing back, he opened himself to the energy, allowing the golden power to envelop and transmute it. Green became gold, destruction became creation. The sacrificial field collapsed inward, drawn into Naruto's aura in a rapid implosion that left stunned silence in its wake. Where withering had begun on injured beast tribe members, golden light passed over them, restoring damaged tissue to health. Even the mercenaries who had begun to deteriorate stabilized, though they remained unconscious. Only their leader, at the epicenter of his own spell, was beyond saving, his body reduced to dust that scattered in the gentle forest breeze. As the last of the sacrificial energy was absorbed, Naruto felt a fundamental shift within himself. The golden power no longer felt entirely separate from his natural energy. The rivers were beginning to merge, just as Celes had described. He rose slowly to his feet, aware of every eye in the clearing fixed upon him. The surviving mercenaries threw down their weapons, terror evident in their expressions. The beast tribe warriors looked on with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Ghislaine approached, her sword returned to its sheath, her amber eyes assessing him with new respect. "What you just did should not have been possible. Sacrificial fields cannot be countered once activated, only contained until they burn out." "I didn't counter it," Naruto explained, still processing what had happened himself. "I accepted it, transformed it." "Transformation through acceptance," Elder Celes said, hobbling forward with the aid of her staff. "The highest principle of dragon magic. Not opposition, but transmutation." She gazed at Naruto with eyes that seemed to see through him to the power flowing within. "The fragment awakens more quickly than anticipated. Soon, it will no longer be a fragment at all, but something new, neither fully dragon nor fully human." The implications of her words settled heavily on Naruto. He was changing, becoming something unprecedented in either world. The question was, would he still be Naruto Uzumaki when the transformation completed? As if sensing his concern, Ghislaine placed a hand on his shoulder. A surprisingly gentle gesture from the formidable warrior. "The core of a person is not their power, but their choices. Remember that in the days to come." Naruto nodded gratefully, then turned his attention to the immediate aftermath of the battle. What about them? He asked, gesturing toward the surviving mercenaries. They will be questioned, then released beyond our territory, Celes decided. Their defeat will serve as warning to others who might consider similar actions. And their wounded will be treated alongside our own, she confirmed, though several Beast Tribe warriors looked displeased with this decision. We are not barbarians, regardless of what humans believe. As the settlement began the process of recovery, extinguishing fires, treating injuries, securing Preso. Nurse, Ghislaine drew Naruto and Agia aside. This attack confirms what I suspected, she said gravely. Hitagami's influence extends beyond dimensional constructs to human pawns. Your presence here will continue to draw danger to these people. I know, Naruto acknowledged, guilt weighing heavily on him. That's why I need to leave as soon as possible. To the Sword Sanctum, Ghislaine agreed. There, you can train without endangering innocence. The Sanctum's protective barriers have stood unbreached for millennia. She turned to Agia. Will you accompany us? The journey will be dangerous. But your knowledge of the fragment's manifestation could prove valuable. The lioness warrior glanced toward her grandmother, who nodded almost imperceptibly from across the clearing. I will come, Agia decided. The elder foresaw this path for me, though I did not understand until now. Then we depart at first light, Ghislaine declared. The Sanctum lies 7 days' journey to the west, beyond the Crystal Mountains. Pack only what is essential, we travel fast and fight if necessary. As the two beast women moved away to make preparations, Naruto remained where he stood, watching the Beast Tribe community working together to rebuild. Despite the attack and the danger he represented, not one had suggested turning him away. I'll make this right, he promised silently. I'll master this power and protect both worlds from whatever's coming. The golden energy pulsed in response, and for a brief moment, Naruto caught a glimpse of something vast and ancient stirring within his consciousness, a presence both alien and increasingly familiar. Not a separate entity like Kurama had been, but a perspective, a way of perceiving reality that transcended human limitations. For the first time, he didn't resist this awareness but embraced it with cautious curiosity. Who were you? He asked the fragment silently. And what are we becoming? Asterisk. No words answered him, but impressions wed through his mind. A sense of cycles ending and beginning, of ancient purpose finding new expression, of powers in balance and opposition across dimensions. And beneath it all, a single concept Chi resonated with Naruto's own core belief: protect, endure, connect. Asterisk. Whatever the dragon god had been originally, whatever Naruto was becoming now, that shared purpose gave him hope. He would not lose himself in this transformation but find a new expression of who he had always been. With renewed determination, he turned to help with the settlement's recovery efforts. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and the journey to the Sword Sanctum. Tonight, he would repay the Beast Tribe's hospitality with every bit of assistance he could provide. As he worked alongside the lion people into the evening, the red planet rose over the forest, casting its crimson light across the landscape. Somewhere beyond the visible spectrum, barriers between worlds continued to weaken. Hitagami's servants searched for ways to reach him. Friends in a distant dimension wondered about his fate. And within Naruto Uzumaki, the fragment of a dragon god continued its gradual awakening, preparing for battles. Chi would determine the fate of multiple worlds. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Noble Challenges. The Sword Sanctum defied expectations. Naruto had imagined an imposing fortress or temple complex, perhaps, perched atop a mountain with intimidating defenses. Instead, after 7 grueling days of travel through increasingly hostile terrain, Ghislaine led them to what appeared to be an ordinary valley nest. Led between 2 modest peaks in the Crystal Mountains. A small lake of impossible clarity reflected the surrounding landscape with mirror-like precision. Several simple wooden structures dotted the shoreline, smoke rising lazily from stone chimneys. The only hint of the location's significance was a weathered stone archway marking the valley's entrance, carved with symbols that seemed to shift subtly when viewed from different angles. This is it? Naruto asked, unable to keep the disappointment from his voice. I was expecting something more impressive, Agia suggested, her tail twitching with amusement. True power rarely announces itself, Ghislaine replied, leading them toward the archway. The sanctum's strength lies not in imposing architecture but in what it contains, and what it conceals. As they passed beneath the stone arch, Naruto felt a curious sensation, like walking through an invisible curtain of warm water. The air rippled around them momentarily, and the view ahead changed. Where moments before stood a handful of simple structures beside a lake, there now sprawled a vast complex stretching across the entire valley floor. Concentric rings of buildings surrounded a central courtyard where dozens of figures moved through synchronized combat forms. Training grounds of various designs occupied the eastern portion of the valley, while the western side featured meditation gardens and what appeared to be experimental magical facilities. Most remarkably, floating several hundred meters above the central complex was an inverted pyramid of crystalline material that refracted sunlight in prismatic patterns across the valley floor. Perception barrier, Ghislaine explained, noting Naruto's stunned expression. The sanctum exists in multiple layers of reality simultaneously. What outsiders see is merely the shadow of its true form. Incredible, Naruto breathed, understanding now why Ghislaine believed this place could offer protection from Hitogame's servants. The dimensional complexity of the sanctum would make it nearly impossible to target with rifts or constructs. As they descended into the valley proper, figures began to take notice of their arrival. Warriors of various races, humans, beast tribe members, and several beings Naruto couldn't readily identify, paused in their activities to observe the newcomers. Particularly, many eyes fixed on Naruto, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. They sense the fragment, Agia observed quietly. Even dormant, its aura is distinctive. A delegation approached. From the central building, 3 individuals walking with the measured confidence of those secure in their authority. At their center walked a human woman of middle years, her silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun. Her posture ramrod straight. Flanking her were 2 warriors, a massive bear tribe male with battle scars crisscrossing his fur, and a slender human man whose eyes glowed with an inner light that suggested significant magical capability. Sword King, the woman greeted Ghislaine with a respectful inclination of her head. Your return is timely. Dimensional disturbances have increased threefold since the last moon. Grandmaster Nishio, Ghislaine replied with equal respect. I bring news related to those disturbances, and one who may hold the key to understanding them. The Grandmaster's sharp gaze shifted to Naruto, assessing him with the clinical precision of a scientist examining an unusual specimen. So I see. The dragon essence is unmistakable, though curiously fragmented. This is Naruto Uzumaki, Ghislaine introduced. A warrior from another dimension, carrying a fragment of the dragon god itself. The reaction among the delegation was immediate. The bear warrior's hand moved instinctively to his weapon, while the mage's glowing eyes widened in alarm. Bold claims, Grandmaster Nishio remarked, her voice betraying no emotion despite the tension suddenly crackling in the air. Perhaps better discussed in private. She gestured toward the central building. Come. The inner circle should hear this directly. As they followed the delegation, Naruto leaned closer to Ghislaine. Inner circle. The governing council of the sanctum, she explained quietly. 7 masters representing different martial and magical traditions. They join the sanctum's independence and determine who may train here. And if they decide I shouldn't stay? Naruto asked, already anticipating resistance. Ghislaine's expression remained impassive. Then we find another solution. But the sanctum has always valued knowledge over fear. They will listen before deciding. The central building proved to be even more impressive inside than out. The N Hall featured a circular chamber with a domed ceiling depicting constellations that slowly rotated overhead, somehow showing both day and night skies simultaneously. 7 ornate chairs arranged in a semicircle dominated the far end of the chamber, each uniquely designed to reflect different cultural aesthetics. 5 of these chairs were already occupied by figures of varying ages and species. The Grand Master took the central seat, while the bear warrior claimed another. A murmur of conversation passed between the assembled masters as they regarded the newcomers with intense scrutiny. Road King Ghislaine requests audience with the inner circle, Grandmaster Nishio announced formally. She brings a visitor of significant interest. An elderly human man with a magnificent white beard stroked his chin thoughtfully. The one with the dragon aura. Yes, most intriguing. Please, Sword King, enlighten us. Over the next hour, Ghislaine explained everything, the dimensional rifts appearing in the forest, the executor construct they'd defeated, the mercenary attack on Sunmane, and most importantly, Naruto's unusual status as a vessel for a dragon god fragment. Naruto occasionally rejected to fill in details about his world and the separation from Kurama, while Agia confirmed the beast tribe's experiences with the increasing disturbances. When they finished, silence hung heavy in the chamber as the masters processed this extraordinary information. Finally, a diminutive female member of what appeared to be a reptilian species spoke, her voice surprisingly melodious. If what you say is true, this young man represents both unprecedented opportunity and terrible danger. Opportunity? Questioned the bear warrior gruffly. The last time the dragon god's power manifested in our world, entire continents were reshaped. Some would call that catastrophe, not opportunity. Knowledge is always opportunity, countered the reptilian master. And here sits a living bridge between dimensions, carrying power that has been mere legend for millennia. What might we learn? At what cost? Rumbled the bear warrior. If his presence draws Hitogame's servants, the sanctum itself could become a target. Grandmaster Nishio raised a hand, silencing the debate before it could escalate. These concerns are valid, but premature. First, we must verify. Her gaze fixed on Naruto. Would you submit to examination? Naruto Uzumaki, our mage adepts can confirm the nature of the energy you carry without harm to you. Naruto hesitated only briefly before nodding. I have nothing to hide. But I should warn you, the power sometimes reacts unpredictably when probed. Caution will be exercised, the Grand Master assured him. She gestured to the human mage who had accompanied them. Master Lyrius will conduct the examination. He specializes in essence identification. The mage approached, his glowing eyes now dimmed to a subtle illumination. Please stand in the center of the chamber. Remain relaxed and offer no resistance. This will be painless if you don't fight it. Naruto moved to the indicated position, shooting a questioning glance toward Ghislaine, who gave a subtle nod of encouragement. Centering himself, he closed his eyes and tried to maintain the mental state of acceptance he'd been practicing during their journey. Master Lyrius extended both hands, pal. Ms. facing Naruto without quite touching him. A soft humming filled the air as patterns of light, not gold like the fragment's energy, but a cool blue, formed complex geometric shapes around Naruto's body. Remarkable, the mage murmured as the patterns shifted and flowed. His energy pathways are unlike anything in our taxonomies, neither pure dragon magic nor human mana circuits. The blue light intensified, probing deeper. Naruto felt a subtle pressure against his consciousness, like fingers gently testing the surface of a pond. The golden energy within him stirred in response, not aggressively but with definite awareness. There, Lyrius said with quiet excitement. The fragment responds. It recognizes the examination ritual. This is no crude imitation or coincidental similarity, this is authentic dragon essence. Bearing the specific resonance pattern of the dragon god himself. He stepped back, the blue light fading. There can be no doubt. Ghislaine's account is accurate in all particulars. The inner circle exchanged meaningful glances, the implications settling heavily in the chamber. Finally, Grandmaster Nishio spoke again. The sanctum was established to preserve Nold GE and train those with exceptional potential, she stated. In 3,000 years, few have presented potential more exceptional than this. Naruto Uzumaki will be granted residence and training rights, under the direct supervision of Sword King Ghislaine and with appropriate safeguards. Relief washed through Naruto. Being accepted by the sanctum meant access to training and protection while he learned to control the fragment's power. Thank you, he said sincerely. I promise I'll work hard and try not to cause trouble. A faint smile ghosted across the Grandmaster's severe features. Noble intentions, but perhaps unrealistic. The dragon god never passed anywhere quietly, and I suspect his fragment will prove similarly disruptive. She rose from her chair, the other masters following suit. You will be assigned quarters in the Eastern Complex. Training begins at dawn tomorrow. Until then, rest and acclimate to our environment. As the masters filed out, the elderly bearded man paused beside Naruto. Young man, he said quietly, a word of caution. The name, Dragon God, carries significant historical weight here. Some will view you with awe, others with fear, still others with ambition. Trust carefully. With that cryptic advice, he followed his colleagues, leaving Naruto with Ghislaine and Aegea in the now empty chamber. That went better than expected, Aegea remarked, her tail swishing with evident relief. The inner circle values knowledge above most concerns, Ghislaine confirmed. But Grandmaster Nishio was right. Your presence will prove disruptive regardless of your intentions, Naruto. The moment word spreads that a dragon god fragment walks among us, many interests will take notice. Including Hitogame's servants, Naruto acknowledged grimly. Yes, but they were already aware. Ghislaine pointed out, at least here, you will have protection while learning to control your power. Come, I will show you to your quarters. Dawn came early in the sword sanctum. Naruto woke to the sound of a resonant gong echoing through the valley, its vibrations seeming to penetrate stone and wood alike. He rose from the simple pallet in his assigned court. A modest room with minimal furnishings but excellent ventilation and a small meditation alcove. After washing at the basin provided, Naruto donned the training garments that had been delivered previous evening. Loose-fitting black pants and a sleeveless gray tunic, both made from a fabric that felt ordinary but seemed to adjust perfectly to his movements. His tattered shinobi outfit had been taken for repair or replacement. He wasn't sure which. Stepping outside, he found Ghislaine waiting, her massive sword strapped to her back as always. She wore no special training attire, apparently preferring her usual battle-ready appearance. You look rested, she observed. Good. Today we'll test your limits. I'm ready, Naruto assured her, stretching muscles that still ached slightly from the long journey to the sanctum. What's first on the agenda? Assessment, Ghislaine replied, leading him toward the central training grounds. Before specialized training begins, the masters must understand your current capabilities, both with and without the fragment's influence. The training grounds were already bustling with activity despite the early hour. Warriors of all descriptions practiced with weapons, hand-to-hand techniques, or what appeared to be magical combat. Some trained alone, others in pairs or small groups, all with an intensity of focus that reminded Naruto of ANBU training sessions he'd glimpsed in Konoha. Ghislaine brought him to a circular area marked off with white stones. In the center stood the bear warrior from the previous day's council, massive arms crossed over his chest as he observed their approach with critical eyes. Master Gorm will assess your physical capabilities, Ghislaine explained. He is our foremost expert on bodily potential and limitations. The Sword King speaks too modestly of my expertise, the bear warrior rumbled, his deep voice surprisingly cultured despite his intimidating appearance. I merely understand how bodies break and how they strengthen. It is a practical science. He gestured for Naruto to enter the circle. We begin with baseline measurements. No enhanced techniques, no fragment influence, just the natural capabilities of your physical form. What followed was the most comprehensive physical evaluation Naruto had ever experienced. Master Gorm tested his speed, strength, flexibility, reaction time, endurance, and coordination through a series of increasingly difficult challenges. Throughout, the bear warrior made notes on a small scroll, occasionally grunting with interest at particular results. Your base physical capabilities exceed human norms by approximately 30%, Gorm concluded after nearly 2 hours of testing. Even without accessing your fragment, you possess exceptional potential. I've trained as a shinobi since childhood, Naruto explained, trying not to show how winded the assessment had left him. And hosting Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, probably changed my physiology over time. Indeed, your cellular structure shows evidence of adapting to contain enormous energy, Gorm agreed. Which likely explains why your body could accept the dragon fragment without being destroyed. Most human vessels would have combusted immediately. That sobering observation was interrupted by the arrival of Master Lyrius, the mage who had examined Naruto the previous day. Physical assessment complete, he inquired, his glowing eyes scanning Gorm's notes with interest. Excellent. Now we may proceed to energy diagnostics. Unlike the physical assessment, which had taken place in the open training ground, the energy evaluation occurred in a specialized chamber beneath the central building. The circular room was lined with crystals similar to those Naruto had seen at the pools where they'd encountered the executor construct, though these pulsed with controlled, harmonious light. This chamber allows precise measurement of energy manifestations while containing any unexpected discharges. Lyrius explained as Naruto took position in the center. Now, I want you to access the fragment's power gradually, starting with the minimal amount you can control. Naruto nodded, closing his eyes to focus. Rather than forcing the energy as he might have with chakra, he extended a mental invitation, allowing the golden power to rise naturally in response to his intent. The fragment responded eagerly, perhaps too eagerly. Golden light bloomed across Naruto's skin, intensifying more rapidly than he'd intended. He heard Lyrius make a startled sound and opened his eyes to find the chamber's crystals pulsing rapidly, resonating with his energy. Fascinating, the mage breathed. The fragment's power exists simultaneously in multiple harmonic states. It's not merely strong, it's dimensionally complex. Quote, he made several arcane gestures, causing the crystals to shift color patterns. Try to shape the energy now. Not into an attack, but into a defined form, a sphere, perhaps. Naruto extended one hand, focusing on creating a simple ball of golden energy above his palm. The power flowed easily, forming a perfect sphere that hovered steadily, until it began to rotate on its axis. Then develop smaller orbiting spheres without Naruto consciously directing it to do so. It's elaborating on my intent, Naruto observed, watching the increasingly complex geometric pattern forming above his palm. The fragment possesses its own intelligence, Lyrius confirmed. Not consciousness as we understand it, but a kind of memory. It remembers being part of something greater and seeks to express that complexity. The evaluation continued for another hour, with Lyrius testing how the fragment's energy interacted with various magical stimuli. Unlike chakra, which operated on relatively predictable principles, the dragon power seemed to adapt and respond uniquely to each test, sometimes in ways that visibly surprised the experienced mage. I've seen enough for preliminary classification, Lyrius finally announced. The fragment's energy signature is indeed consistent with historical records of the dragon god, though modified by its integration with your native energy system. It appears to be adapting to your specific attributes rather than simply overriding them. Is that good or bad? Naruto asked. Unprecedented, Lyrius replied. The Raical dragon god was an entity of pure cosmic force. His power obliterated mortal vessels. Yet somehow, you're achieving symbiosis rather than being consumed. He made a final notation on his scroll. Your training will need to be equally unprecedented. Standard energy control exercises will be insufficient. Ghislaine, who had observed silently throughout the evaluation, stepped forward. I have a proposal. The tournament of facing mirrors begins in 3 days in Milishan. It would provide practical combat experience against varied opponents under controlled conditions. Lyrius raised an eyebrow. You suggest taking him outside the sanctum's protection so soon? The risk seems considerable, as does the opportunity, Ghislaine countered. Controlled combat situations often catalyze breakthroughs in energy manipulation. Moreover, the tournament takes place within the sacred grounds of Milis, which possess their own dimensional stabilization properties. Naruto perked up at the mention of a tournament. After days of theoretical discussion and careful testing, the prospect of actual combat, even regulated tournament fighting, sounded refreshing. I'd like to try it, he said. Quote, I've always learned best by doing rather than studying. Lyrius considered the proposal, then nodded reluctantly. I will consult with Grandmaster Nishio, but your reasoning is sound, Sword King. The tournament's protective wards combined with your supervision should provide adequate safeguards. Milishan, capital city of the Holy Kingdom of Milis, sprawled across a series of low hills surrounding a massive central cathedral. Unlike the forest settlements or the naturalistic sword sanctum, this was unquestionably a human city, organized in concentric rings with increasingly grand architecture as one moved inward toward the religious center. Naruto, Ghislaine, and Agia approached the city through its eastern gate, joining a steady stream of travelers arriving for the tournament of facing mirrors. Many were obviously warriors, carrying weapons or displaying the confident bearing of trained fighters. Others appeared to be merchants or spectators, drawn by the commercial opportunity. Ties and entertainment value of the event. The tournament is held twice yearly, Ghislaine explained as they made their way through busy streets. Originally a religious ceremony demonstrating martial virtues, it has evolved into a significant cultural and political event. Political, Naruto questioned, taking in the unfamiliar urban landscape with curious eyes. Various factions use tournament and performance to gauge military potential or establish prestige, Agia elaborated. Noble houses sponsor champions, military academies showcase promising students, and independent warriors seek recognition that might lead to lucrative employment. And the prize? Gold, certainly, Ghislaine replied. But more valuable are the connections and recognition. Many legendary careers began with tournament victories. They had dressed to avoid drawing undue attention. Naruto in simple traveler's clothing rather than sanctum training garb, Agia wearing a hooded cloak that partially concealed her leonine features, and Ghislaine, well. The Sword King made no particular concessions to stealth, her massive sword and imposing presence drawing inevitable notice regardless. We should secure lodging before registering for the tournament, Agia suggested as they navigated the increasingly crowded thoroughfare. Ghislaine nodded. The Silver Chalice maintains private rooms for qualified participants. As a previous champion, I have standing reservations. The inn proved to be an elegant 3-story establishment near the tournament grounds, its clientele distinctly more refined than the boisterous crowds Naruto observed at other nearby establishments. The proprietor, a dignified elderly woman, recognized Ghislaine immediately and personally escorted them to a suite of rooms overlooking a small private garden. The tournament roster is particularly distinguished this season, the innkeeper informed them as she unlocked the door to their accommodations. Several noble houses have entered champions, including a direct member of House Boreas Greyrat, which is unusual. Ghislaine's ears perked with interest. Which member? The young Eris, Lady Eris. They say she's quite the prodigy with the sword. Despite her youth, the innkeeper's expression suggested polite skepticism. Though noble blood and true skill rarely coincide in my experience. After settling into their rooms, Naruto and his companions made their way to the tournament grounds, an impressive complex of arenas, training facilities, and administrative buildings surrounding a central coliseum. The Registrati hall bustled with activity as warriors from across the continent submitted their credentials and completed the necessary formalities. As they waited in line, Naruto observed the diverse array of potential competitors. Humans predominated, but he noted representatives from various beast tribes, a few individuals with the distinctive features of demon race members, and even several beings whose species he couldn't readily identify. The tournament accepts all qualified participants regardless of race or origin, Ghislaine explained, noting his interest. Combat capability is the only criterion that matters. And how do they determine that? Naruto asked. Preliminary matches, Agia replied. Simple contests to eliminate those without basic competence. The main tournament brackets are formed from those who pass. When they reached the registration desk, Ghislaine's name caused an immediate stir among the officials. The Sword King's reputation clearly extended far beyond Beast Tribe territories. We are honored by your participation, Sword King, the chief registrar said with a formal bow. Will you be competing in the Masters division as usual? Not this year, Ghislaine replied. I come as sponsor and observer. My protege will represent our interest. She indicated Naruto, who found himself suddenly under intense scrutiny from the registration officials. His name and qualifications, the registrar inquired, quill poised over the official roster. Naruto Uzumaki, advanced combat specialist from the Eastern Territories, Ghislaine stated smoothly. The geographical reference meant nothing to Naruto, but he assumed it was vague enough to avoid complicated questions about his true origins. Specialization, adaptive combat, multiple disciplines. The registrar made note of this, then handed Naruto a token carved from pale wood. Preliminary assessment in Arena 3 at 4th bell. Do not be late. As they exited the registration hall, Naruto examined the token curiously. What exactly happens in this preliminary assessment? A demonstration of basic competence, Ghislaine explained. You'll face a series of standardized challenges: weapon proficiency, unarmed defense, energy control. Nothing that should trouble you unduly. And the fragment's power? Naruto asked quietly. Should I use it? Ghislaine considered this. Minimally. Demonster. 8 enough skill to qualify without revealing your full capabilities. Many eyes watch the preliminaries, seeking to gauge potential opponents. Strategic anonymity. Agia added with a hint of amusement. A warrior who reveals everything in the preliminaries has already surrendered advantage. The remainder of the day was spent familiarizing themselves with the tournament grounds and observing their competitors' preliminary assessments. Naruto paid particular attention to the evaluation criteria and the range of skills demonstrated, mentally preparing for his own assessment the following day. That evening, as they dined in the inn's private dining room, Ghislaine shared more details about the tournament structure. After preliminaries, qualified participants are sorted into brackets based on demonstrated capability. Early rounds are typically one-on-one duels with standard victory conditions: surrender, ring out, or incapacitation. What about later rounds? Naruto asked. More complex, Ghislaine replied. Some feature environmental challenges or special conditions. The semi-finals and finals often incorporate magical elements that test adaptability as well as combat prowess. The key is maintaining power reserves, Agia advised. Many novices exhaust themselves in early rounds, leaving nothing for the advanced challenges. Naruto nodded, appreciating their guidance. He had participated in the Chunin exams back in his world. This tournament clearly operated on different principles with unique expectations. Their discussion was interrupted by a commotion in the main dining hall. Raised voices and the scrape of chairs suggested some form of confrontation. Naruto glanced toward the door with curiosity. Should we check what's happening? He asked when the noise continued to escalate. Ghislaine shook her head. Pre-tournament posturing, common among younger competitors seeking to intimidate rivals. Best ignored. Nevertheless, the disturbance soon made itself impossible to ignore as the doors to their private dining room burst open. A young woman stormed in, her crimson hair flying behind her like a battle standard, green eyes flashing with indignation. She wore expensive but practical fighting attire, with a sword sheathed at her hip and an air of absolute confidence despite her youth, perhaps 16 or 17 years old. Behind her, the flustered innkeeper wrung her hands. My deepest apologies, Sword King. Lady Eris insisted on speaking with you directly. So this was the noble Eris mentioned earlier. Naruto studied her with interest as she marched directly to their table, either unaware of or unconcerned by the impropriety of her interruption. Sword King Ghislaine, the young woman declared without preamble, I challenge you to a demonstration match before the tournament begins. My grandfather has authorized any reasonable compensation for your time. Ghislaine regarded the impetuous noblewoman with calm detachment. Lady Boreas Greyrat, your reputation precedes you, though perhaps not in the manner you might prefer. The subtle rebuke did nothing to dampen Eris's determination. My reputation will be established by my sword, not court gossip. I've studied your techniques for years. Testing myself against the acknowledged master would be invaluable experience before the tournament. I am not participating this year, Ghislaine replied evenly. Nor do I offer demonstration matches for individual benefit. Eris frowned, clearly unaccustomed to refusal. Her gaze swept the table, noting Agia and finally landing on Naruto with assessing intensity. Then who is your representative? Surely they would benefit from practice against diverse opponents. Naruto met her challenging stare evenly. Something about her reminded him of himself at a younger age, the same headstrong determination, the same need to prove herself. Before Ghislaine could respond, Naruto spoke up. I'm representing the Sword King in the tournament. Naruto Uzumaki. Eris's eyes narrowed as she evaluated him. You're not a beast tribesman. What qualifies you for the Sword King's sponsorship? That's between me and Ghislaine, Naruto replied with a hint of a smile. But I'm always up for a friendly match if you're looking for practice. The young noblewoman's expression shifted from dismissive to intrigued. Tomorrow, training arena 5, 2 hours past dawn. Don't be late. With that, she turned on her heel and departed as abruptly as she had arrived, leaving a bemused silence in her wake. Well, Agia remarked dryly, you've made an impression. Ghislaine shook her head. House Boreas Greyrat is politically powerful but notorious for producing strong-willed offspring. Lady Eris is reportedly the most tempestuous in generations. She reminds me of myself, Naruto admitted. Always challenging stronger opponents, trying to prove something. The similarity did not escape my notice, Ghislaine replied with the faintest hint of amusement. Perhaps that explains why you agreed to her challenge before consulting your sponsor. Naruto had the grace to look sheepish. Sorry about that. I can cancel if you think it's a bad idea. On the contrary, Ghislaine said thoughtfully. A controlled match before the tournament may help you calibrate your abilities for public display. Lady Eris is reportedly key. Skilled. Talented enough to test you without presenting undue risk. Agia looked less convinced. Noble entanglements rarely end simply. Be cautious, Naruto. House Boreas Greyrat has enemies who am I. GHT take interest in anyone associated with their Eris. Naruto nodded, taking the warning seriously. The last thing he needed was political complications on top of interdimensional threats and mysterious dragon powers. Training Arena 5 proved to be a secluded practice facility designed for private matches rather than public displays. When Naruto arrived at the appointed time, he found Eris already present. Performing warm-up exercises with fluid grace that spoke of years of disciplined training. She wasn't alone. An older man with stern features observed from the sidelines, his attire suggesting the role of tutor or guardian rather than servant. Beside him stood a girl approximately Eris's age, with distinctive green hair and a quiet, watchful demeanor. Eris noticed Naruto's arrival and immediately ceased her exercises, hand moving to her sword hilt with obvious eagerness. You came. Good. I said I would, Naruto replied simply, approaching the marked sparring area. What are the rules for our match? Standard tournament preliminaries, Eris declared. Victory by surrender, incapacitation, or ring out. All techniques permitted except lethal force. The older and stepped forward with a disapproving frown. Lady Eris, I must once again advise against this unauthorized match. Your grandfather specifically instructed. Grandfather instructed me to prepare thoroughly for the tournament. Eris interrupted impatiently. What better preparation than testing myself against the Sword King's chosen representative? She turned back to Naruto. Ignore Ghislaine. He frets unnecessarily. Naruto nodded politely to the concerned tutor, then refocused on Eris. I'm ready when you are. Though I should mention, I specialize in unarmed techniques rather than swordplay. This information clearly surprised Eris. The Sword King sponsors a fighter who doesn't use a sword. Unusual. I'm an unusual case, Naruto replied with a grin, dropping into a relaxed fighting stance that concealed its defensive capabilities behind an appearance of casual readiness. Eris studied his posture with narrowed eyes, then drew her sword in a single smooth motion. The blade, GHTLY curved and clearly of exceptional craftsmanship, gleamed in the morning light. Begin, she declared, immediately launching into an aggressive advance. Her opening attack came with impressive speed, the sword tracing a complex pattern designed to limit defensive options. Naruto recognized the technique as similar to one Ghislaine had demonstrated during their journey, a beast tribe sword style adapted for human physiology. Rather than attempting to block or parry the blade, Naruto relied on evasion, his body moving with the fluid responsiveness he'd developed through years of shinobi training. Even without chakra enhancement, his natural speed and reflexes allowed him to stay just beyond the sword's reach. Eris's green eyes widened slightly in surprise as her initial combination failed to land. Without hesitation, she adjusted her approach, transitioning to a more aggressive style that sacrificed some precision for increased pressure. Naruto continued to evade, studying her movements and rhythm. She was genuinely talented, her footwork near perfect, her sword control exceptional for her age. Yet he detected a pattern in her attacks, a slight tendency to overcommit when frustrated. After allowing her to exhaust her initial combinations, Naruto finally took the offensive. Waiting for a particularly committed thrust, he sidestepped while simultaneously closing distance, entering the dead zone, too close for effective sword use. His counter was a simple open palm strike aimed at her shoulder, enough force to demonstrate vulnerability without causing injury. Eris recognized the danger instantly. Rather than trying to create distance as most swordsmen would, she released her sword with her right hand, using only her left to control the blade while her now free hand deflected Naruto's strike. The maneuver was unorthodox and impressively executed. Not bad, Naruto acknowledged, genuinely impressed by her adaptability. I'm just getting started, Eris replied, a competitive grin spreading across her face as she reclaimed proper grip on her sword. What followed was a dance of increasing complexity. Eris demonstrated a repertoire of techniques that blended several distinct sword styles, transitioning between them fluidly to keep Naruto off balance. For his part, Naruto relied on pure taijutsu, finding the familiar movements of shinobi hand-to-hand combat translated well to this world's fighting paradigms. As the match progressed, Naruto felt the golden energy of the fragment stirring within him, responding to the excitement of combat. He carefully regulated its influence, allowing just enough to enhance his reflexes without creating visible manifestations that might raise questions. Eris, too, seemed to be drawing on some form of energy enhancement. A subtle aura of reddish light occasionally limned her blade during particularly powerful strikes, suggesting rudimentary magic reinforcement. After several minutes of increasingly intense exchange, their match had drawn a small audience, other tournament participants and staff attracted by the skillful display. Naruto became aware of murmurs of appreciation and speculation from these observers. "She's matching the Sword King's representative move for move. The boy's technique is unlike any fighting style I recognize. House Boreas Greyrat has found a worthy heir indeed." The commentary seemed to fuel Eris's determination. Her attacks intensified, precision giving way to power as she sought decisive advantage. When Naruto continued to evade or counter her strikes, frustration began to show in her expression. "Fight properly," she demanded after a particularly elaborate combination yielded no results. "Stop dancing around and attack me seriously." "If you insist," Naruto replied, deciding it was time to demonstrate more of his capability. He launched a counter-offensive that borrowed elements from multiple taijutsu forms, the precision of gentle fist without the chakra manipulation, the overwhelming force of strong fist, and the unpredictable angles of drunken fist. The combination created a bewildering array of strikes that forced Eris onto the defensive for the first time. The young noblewoman's eyes widened in surprise, but her response was immediate and impressive. Rather than breaking under the pressure, she adapted, her sword becoming an extension of her defensive perimeter as she parried, deflected, and occasionally countered Naruto's assault. Their exchange reached new intensity, both fighters fully engaged in what had transformed from a casual practice match into a genuine contest of skill. The audience grew larger, now including several tournament officials watching with professional interest. As their match approached the 15-minute mark, far longer than standard preliminary bouts, Naruto decided to bring things to a conclusion. During a momentary opening in Eris's defense, he committed to a decisive movement, a sweeping low kick, combined with an upper body feint designed to create unavoidable imbalance. Eris recognized the trap too late. As she began to fall, however, she executed a desperate maneuver, using her sword's momentum to spin her body in midair, transforming the fall into a controlled roll that would carry her beyond the sparring area's boundary. Naruto, anticipating a different defensive response, had already committed to his follow-up. His attempt to adjust trajectory mid-motion caused him to lose balance just as Eris's improvised roll carried her into his leg. They collided awkwardly, both tumbling out of bounds simultaneously. Landing in an ungraceful heap just outside the sparring area's perimeter, they lay still for a moment before Eris burst into unexpected laughter. "A draw," she declared, sounding more pleased than disappointed. "Not how I imagined this match ending." Naruto chuckled as he disentangled himself and offered her a hand up. Sometimes the unexpected endings are the most interesting. Eris accepted his assistance, rising to her feet with restored dignity despite the undignified conclusion. "You fight differently. Not like any style I've studied." "I could say the same about you," Naruto replied honestly. "That sword technique that uses momentum to control falls, that's not standard training." "My own innovation," she acknowledged with evident pride. "Grandfather's sword master insisted pure forms were the only proper approach." I disagreed. The green-haired girl who had accompanied Eris approached, offering a cloth to wipe away the noblewoman's perspiration. "You did well, Lady Eris. He's clearly an exceptional opponent." "Indeed," agreed the stern tutor, Ghislaine, though his expression suggested complex calculations rather than simple appreciation. "Perhaps too exceptional. Your lineage, young man, your training background." The question carried undertones that Naruto recognized as political probing. Before he could formulate a suitably vague response, Ghislaine appeared at the edge of the growing crowd, her imposing presence immediately drawing attention. My protégé's background is known to those who need such knowledge, the Sword King stated, her voice carrying effortless authority. Lady Boreas Greyrat requested a practice match, not an interrogation. The tutor stiffened at the rebuke but offered a formal bow. Of course, Sword King. No offense was intended. Eris seemed oblivious to the subtle tension, her attention still focused on Naruto with newfound interest. You'll participate in the main tournament tomorrow. That's the plan, Naruto confirmed. Good. Her green eyes sparkled with competitive fire. Perhaps we'll meet again in the official brackets. Next time won't end in a draw. As their impromptu audience dispersed, Ghislaine led Naruto back toward their lodgings, Agia falling into step beside them. That attracted more attention than anticipated, the Sword King observed, though she didn't sound particularly concerned. The match was instructive. She's really talented, Naruto said. Not just technique, but instinct and adaptability. House Boreas Greyrat spares no expense in training its heirs, Agia remarked. Though raw talent cannot be purchased, the girl has natural ability. Ghislaine nodded. She also has significant political value. As the recognized heir to one of the 7 great houses, her movements draw attention from multiple factions. Is that why her tutor seemed so suspicious of me? Naruto asked. Partly, Ghislaine confirmed. Noble houses constantly assess potential threats and advantages. An unknown fighter displaying unusual skill naturally raises questions. Especially one associated with the Sword King, Agia added. Your connection to Ghislaine elevates you from curiosity to potential political factor. Naruto sighed. So much for keeping a low profile. The profile was inevitably compromised the moment you entered the tournament, Ghislaine stated pragmatically. The question now becomes how to manage the attention rather than avoid it entirely. As they walked, Naruto noticed subtle indicators of being observed, not just the open curiosity of tournament participants, but the more calculating assessment of individuals who lingered in shadows or watched from windows above. We're being watched, he noted quietly. Yes, Ghislaine confirmed without bothering to look around. Tournament scouts, noble house informants, possibly mercenary talent assessors, standard attention for promising newcomers, and possibly others with more concerning interests. Agia added in a near whisper. The executor construct that attacked in the forest operated through human proxies. We should assume similar agents exist here. The reminder of Hitagami's influence sobered Naruto. While he had enjoyed the straightforward challenge of matching skills with Eris, the larger context remained. Somewhere in this city, perhaps watching at this very moment, enemies sought his destruction, not for any personal grievance, but simply because he carried a fragment of their ancient adversary. The tournament begins properly tomorrow, Ghislaine said as they reached the inn. Preliminary assessments this afternoon, then bracket assignments by evening. Rest now. Conserve your strength. The preliminary assessment proved anticlimactic after the morning's match with Eris. Naruto demonstrated sufficient skill to qualify easily, though he was careful to keep the fragment's golden energy completely suppressed throughout the standardized tests. By evening, the tournament brackets were posted, revealing his position in the western quadrant, fortuitously separate from Eris, who had been placed in the eastern brackets. We won't face each other until the semifinals at earliest, Naruto noted as they examined the pairings. Intentional, most likely, Ghislaine observed. Tournament organizers often separate noteworthy competitors to maximize potential for dramatic confrontations in later rounds. The first day of tournament matches began with sunrise. The early rounds moved quickly, with multiple arenas operating simultaneously to accommodate the large field of participants. Naruto's initial matches presented minimal challenge, his shinobi training and natural abilities proving more than sufficient even without calling upon the fragment's power. By midday, he had advanced through 3 rounds, earning increasing attention from spectators drawn to his unusual fighting style. Between matches, he caught glimpses of Eris's bouts in the eastern bracket, where the noblewoman dispatched her opponents with efficient swordsmanship that occasionally bordered on ruthless. She fights with something to prove, Agia remarked after witnessing Eris defeat a much larger opponent with particular ferocity. Most nobles who pursue martial paths do, Ghislaine replied. They must constantly demonstrate their position as earned through merit, not merely inherited privilege. Quote, As the tournament progressed to the quarterfinals, the remaining competitors represented truly exceptional skill. Naruto's opponent, a towering warrior from The northern tribes who wielded a massive battle axe, required more strategic approach than simple technical superiority. For the first time in the tournament, Naruto found himself allowing a subtle maya sure of the fragment's energy to enhance his movements. Nothing visibly obvious, but enough to provide the extra edge needed to counter the Northerner's overwhelming strength advantage. Victory earned him advancement to the semifinals, scheduled for the following morning. As they left the arena, discussion turned to potential opponents and strategies, until Agia suddenly tensed, her feline senses alerting her to something the others hadn't noticed. "We're being followed," she murmured, her hand casually moving closer to her concealed blade. 3 individuals, maintaining consistent distance since we left the tournament grounds. Ghislaine didn't visibly react, though Naruto detected a subtle shift in her posture, relaxing in a way that would actually facilitate faster movement if necessary. "Describe them," she requested quietly. 2 male, 1 female. Professional quality, light armor beneath civilian clothing. Coordinated movement patterns suggesting formal training. Agia's assessment came with the precision of an experienced scout. Tournament security, perhaps, Naruto suggested. Or more noble house observers. Security would approach openly, Ghislaine countered. House observers rarely travel in teams with combat formation. Assassins, Agia concluded grimly. Question is, targeting whom? The answer came unexpectedly from a completely different direction. As they turned a corner toward a less crowded avenue, a young servant boy darted from a side alley, nearly colliding with Naruto in his haste. "Pardon, sir," the boy gasped, pressing a folded note into Naruto's hand before darting away again. Naruto unfolded the paper cautiously, revealing a hastily scrawled message. "Lady Eris targeted. Poisoning attempt at Green Chalice Inn. Tutor compromised." Ghislaine read the note over Naruto's shoulder, her expression hardening. "A trap, potentially. Or genuine warning," Agia countered. The boy wore Boreas Greyrat livery, though subdued. "The Green Chalice is 3 streets east," Ghislaine noted. "If this is legitimate, we have little time." Naruto's decision was immediate. "We have to check. If Eris is in danger and we ignore it." "Agreed," Ghislaine stated, already adjusting course toward the mentioned inn. "But with caution. Our followers may be connected to this situation." They proceeded with heightened awareness, Ghislaine taking the lead while Agia maintained rearguard position. Naruto extended his senses as best he could without chakra, alert for any sign of ambush or deception. The Green Chalice Inn proved to be a modest establishment compared to their own lodgings, respectable but not luxurious. As they approached, nothing seemed obviously amiss, though the relative quiet compared to neighboring businesses raised subtle concerns. "Too still," Ghislaine murmured, her hand moving to her sword hilt. "No staff visible through windows. No patron movement. Trap confirmed." Then, Agia whispered, her tail lashing with tension beneath her cloak. "Not necessarily for us," Naruto countered. "If someone is targeting Eris." He didn't need to finish the thought. All 3 understood the implications. The note might have been a genuine warning about a separate plot targeting the noble Eris, with their own followers representing an unrelated threat. "I'll enter through the front," Ghislaine decided. "My recents may disrupt whatever scenario awaits." Agia, secure the rear exit. Naruto, find alternative entry and locate the girl if possible. Without waiting for acknowledgement, the Sword King strode directly toward the inn's main entrance, her imposing presence making subtlety unnecessary. Agia slipped away immediately, moving with the silent grace of a natural predator toward the building's rear. Naruto assessed his options quickly. The inn had multiple second-story windows, some partially open despite the evening chill. With a running start and the boost of just a touch of the fragment's power, he managed to leap high enough to catch a windowsill, pulling himself up with practiced ease. The room beyond the window was empty, a standard guest chamber with no signs of recent occupation. Naruto slipped inside silently, listening for any sound that might indicate Eris's location or potential danger. Faint voices reached him from somewhere below, too indistinct to make out words, but the T's cadence suggested confrontation rather than casual conversation. Moving carefully to avoid creaking floorboards, Naruto made his way toward the hallway and the stairs beyond. The inn's interior was unnaturally quiet, confirming their suspicion that something was very wrong. No staff moved through the corridors, no guests occupied the common spaces visible from his position. Either the establishment had been cleared in preparation for something, or its occupants were being detained elsewhere. As Naruto descended the stairs, the voices grew clearer. One he recognized immediately as Eris, her distinctive tone sharp with anger rather than fear. The other belonged to her tutor, Ghislaine, though something about his speech pattern seemed subtly altered. "Disappointed in your lack of cooperation, Lady Eris," the tutor was saying. "Your grandfather's instructions were quite specific. My grandfather would never order me drugged and transported without explanation," Eris retorted, fury evident in her voice. "Whatever game you're playing, Ghislaine, it ends poorly for you when my actual guards arrive." "Your actual guards have been reassigned," the tutor replied, his voice talking on a strange resonance that raised the hairs on Naruto's neck. "As for explanations, they are unnecessary. You are a political asset to be secured, nothing more." Naruto reached the bottom of the stairs, where he could now see into the inn's main dining hall. The scene confirmed their worst suspicions. Eris stood with her back to a wall, sword drawn but clearly at disadvantage against multiple opponents. Her tutor stood several paces away, flanked by four armed individuals whose blank expressions and synchronized movements suggested magical influence or control. Most disturbing, the tutor's eyes now glowed with an unnatural purplish light identical to what Naruto had observed in the executor construct from the forest. Hitagami's influence, Naruto realized with a chill. Whether the tutor was possessed, replaced, or had been a sleeper agent all along was unclear, but the connection to their interdimensional enemy was unmistakable. The question was, why target Eris? Was this simply a way to create political chaos? Or did the noblewoman have some connection to the larger cosmic conflict that Naruto didn't yet understand? He had no time to ponder these questions. One of the entrolled guards noticed his presence and turned mechanically in his direction, raising a crossbow with inhuman precision. Naruto ducked as the bolt whistled past his head, embedding itself in the wooden stair rail with a solid thunk. The sound alerted the others to his presence, including Eris, whose expression shifted from anger to surprise. She exclaimed. "What are you doing here?" "Apparently, saving you," Naruto replied, diving into a roll as another crossbow bolt narrowly missed him. "Though I'm still figuring out from what exactly." The possessed tutor turned to face Naruto fully, his unnatural eyes narrowing with recognition. The fragment vessel, unexpected, but fortuitous. 2 targets secured with one operation. "I wouldn't call either of us secured just yet," Naruto countered, positioning himself to draw attention away from Eris while assessing tactical options. The controlled guards moved to surround him, weapons raised with mechanical precision. The main door burst open with dramatic timing, revealing Ghislaine with sword already drawn. "Release your captives," the Sword King commanded, her presence filling the room with palpable authority. The possessed tutor smiled coldly. "Sword King Ghislaine." The variables accumulate interestingly. He gestured casually toward his controlled guards. "Eliminate the interference." What followed was chaos expertly choreographed by trained combatants. The guards attacked with unnaturally perfect coordination, suggesting some form of hive mind control. Ghislaine engaged 2 simultaneously, her massive sword eating defensive patterns that somehow occupied minimal space while providing maximum coverage. Naruto found himself facing the remaining pair, forced to rely on pure taijutsu against their magically enhanced precision. Without fully unleashing the fragment's power, which he still hesitated to reveal publicly, the contest proved challenging. Each guard moved with perfect economy of motion, their attacks synchronized to eliminate defensive options. Eris, rather than fleeing the danger, seized the opportunity to launch her own assault against her former tutor. Her sword flashed with practiced precision, driving the possessed man backward despite his unnatural capabilities. "Whatever you've done with Ghislaine, you'll regret it," she snarled, her attacks fueled by personal betrayal as much as tactical necessity. The possessed tutor parried her strikes with surprising skill, his movements suggesting combat training beyond what one would expect from an academic mentor. "Your concern is misplaced, child." Your tutor serves a greater purpose now as vessel for more worthy consciousness. While maintaining his own defense against the controlled guards, Naruto observed the exchange with growing concern. If the tutor was indeed possessed rather than replaced, that suggested Hitogame's servants could potentially influence anyone, a disturbing escalation of the threat. One of the guards nagged to score a glancing blow against Naruto's shoulder, the blade slicing through fabric to draw blood. The minor wound was less concerning than the greenish residue left on the torn sleeve, poison, almost certainly. Enough playing defensively, Naruto decided. While he still hesitated to reveal the fragment's full power, the situation clearly warranted more than purely physical techniques. Drawing on the golden energy, he allowed it to manifest just enough to enhance his speed and strength beyond normal human limitations. The guard's next coordinated attack met empty air as Naruto seemed to blur between their weapons, counter-attacking with precision strikes to nerve clusters that temporarily disrupted their motor control. Across the room, Ghislaine had already disabled her opponents with similar efficiency. Their unconscious forms crumpled on the floorboards. She turned her attention toward Eris and the possessed tutor just as Agia appeared from a service entrance, completing their pincer movement. Recognizing his tactical disadvantage, the possessed tutor disengaged from Eris with a snarling curse. This encounter is merely postponed, he declared, his unnatural eyes fixing briefly on Naruto. The human gods will transcend temporary setbacks. Before anyone could prevent it, he bit down hard on something concealed in his cheek. Purplish foam immediately bubbled from his lips as his body convulsed violently. Within seconds, he collapsed, the unnatural light fading from his eyes as whatever consciousness had possessed him departed. Eris stared in horror at her former tutor's body. Ghislaine, she whispered, the reality of his death momentarily overwhelming her martial composure. That wasn't your tutor, Naruto said gently, moving to her side. Not anymore. Something was controlling him. What kind of poison causes purple foam? Eris demanded, shock transforming quickly back to anger. What's happening here? Why target me? Ghislaine approached the body cautiously, examining it without touching the toxic residue. This was not poison in the conventional sense. It was a dimensional severance compound, designed to forcibly separate possessing entities from their hosts. Which suggests the possession was recent, Agia added, securing the unconscious guards with efficient knots. Your tutor may have been compromised specifically for this opera. Tian rather than serving as a long-term agent. That doesn't answer why, Eris insisted, her sword still gripped tightly despite the immediate danger having passed. What possible reason would anyone have to target me? I have political value to house Boreas Greyrat, certainly, but this, she gestured toward the bodies, this suggests something beyond ordinary political maneuvering. Naruto changed a meaningful glance with Ghislaine, silently questioning how much to reveal. The Sword King gave an almost imperceptible nod, acknowledgement that some level of explanation was now necessary. Your abduction was likely secondary, Naruto explained carefully. I was the primary target. You were bait, or perhaps a convenient distraction. You, Eris's eyebrows rose in skepticism. Why would anyone target a tournament fighter with no apparent political connections? Before Naruto could formulate a suitably edited response, the sound of approaching guards interrupted the conversation. The commotion had finally attracted official attention from the city watch. Explanations must wait, Ghislaine decided. This scene requires careful management to avoid broader complications. I know someone who can help with that, Eris offered unexpectedly. My grandfather maintains certain arrangements with local authorities precisely for situations requiring discretion. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Your grandfather plans for assassination attempts on his heir. House Boreas Greyrat plans for all contingencies, Eris replied with grim practicality that seemed at odds with her previously impetuous demeanor. Though I suspect this particular scenario falls outside standard protocols. What followed was a masterclass in noble privilege and political maneuvering. With a few careful, chosen words to the arriving city watch, Eris activated a response that efficiently contained the situation. The deceased tutor was removed discreetly, the unconscious guards secured for interrogation, and the entire incident classified as a training exercise with unfortunate accidents. Within hours, they had relocated to more secure accommodations, a private residence maintained by House Boreas Greyrat for visiting family members. complete with its own security contingent and magical protections. My grandfather will expect explanations, Eris informed them once they were settled in the mansion's secure study. As do I. She fixed Naruto with an intense stare, her earlier competitiveness replaced by sharp focus. You said I was a secondary target. That implies you know who was behind this and why they would want you. Given that my tutor died in this plot, I believe I'm entitled to answers. Naruto looked to Ghislaine, deferring to her judgment on how much could be safely shared. The Sword King considered briefly before speaking. Lady Boreas Greyrat, what do you know of the ancient conflict between the dragon god and the being called Hitagami? Eris blinked, clearly surprised by the question. Old religious texts mention them, cosmic entities whose battles shaped the world in prehistoric times. What does that have to do with today's events? Everything, Ghislaine replied simply. Naruto carries a fragment of the dragon god's power within him. The servants of Hitagami seek to destroy him before that power fully awakens. The young noblewoman's expression cycled rapidly through disbelief, skepticism, and finally thoughtful consideration as she processed this extraordinary claim. That's difficult to accept, she said finally. Yet it would explain certain anomalies I observed during our match. Your movements sometimes seem to transcend normal human limitations. She turned to Naruto directly. Show me. Prove what she claims. After a moment's hesitation, Naruto nodded. Here, in a secured private location, the risks of demonstration seemed acceptable. He extended his hand, palm upward, and allowed the golden energy to manifest visibly, a swirling sphere of light that illuminated the study with warm radiance. Eris stared, fascination overcoming skepticism. I've studied magical theory since childhood. This energy corresponds to no known elemental affinity or mana signature. Because it predates the current magical system, Ghislaine explained. Dragon magic existed before modern classifications were established. The noblewoman reached toward the golden sphere, not quite touching it but close enough to feel its warmth. Why would my tutor be targeted as part of this? What connection could House Boreas Greyrat possibly have to ancient godly conflicts? That remains unclear, Agia admitted. Perhaps your house possesses artifacts or knowledge relevant to these dimensional entities. Or perhaps your lineage itself has significance unknown to you. Or, Naruto suggested, your abduction was simply meant to create political chaos as a distraction while they dealt with me. Eris withdrew her hand from the golden light, her expression hardening into resolve. Whatever their reasoning, they've made a critical error. House Boreas Greyrat does not forgive attacks on its members. She straightened, suddenly every inch the noble heir despite her youth. I will speak with my grandfather immediately. House resources must be mobilized, information gathered. Caution, Ghislaine advised. This enemy operates beyond conventional political frameworks. They can apparently possess individuals close to their targets. Trust must be carefully considered. All the more reason to involve my grandfather directly, Eris countered. As head of the house, he has access to protective measures and information networks beyond my personal reach. The determination in her voice made clear that this was not a suggestion but a decision already made. Naruto recognized the stubbornness, again so similar to his own, and knew attempting to dissuade her would be futile. At minimum, we should complete the tournament, he suggested instead. Withdrawing now would signal weakness and potentially alert other agents that their plot was discovered. Agreed, Eris said immediately. We continue as planned through the semifinals tomorrow. Meanwhile, secure communications can be established with my grandfather. She fixed Naruto with an intense gaze. And you will tell me everything about this dragon god fragment and why it chose you. If I am to be dragged into an ancient cosmic conflict, I deserve complete information. The demand was reasonable, though Naruto wondered how much he could truly explain when he himself still understood so little about the power he carried. Nevertheless, he nodded agreement. I'll tell you what I know. Just understand that I'm still learning myself. Then we shall learn together, Eris declared with unexpected diplomacy. Starting now. What followed was several hours of careful explanation, with Naruto describing his original world, his arrival through the rift, and his gradual discovery of the fragment's nature and capabilities. Ghislaine and Agia contributed additional context about the historical dragon god and Hitagami conflict, drawing on beast tribe oral traditions and sanctum records. Throughout, Eris listened with surprising patience, interrupting only to ask insightful questions that revealed a sharp analytical mind beneath her impetuous exterior. So the tournament was never your primary purpose, she concluded when they finally finished. You sought controlled combat situations to test the fragment's capabilities while remaining within the protective wards of Millis' sacred grounds. Exactly, Naruto confirmed, impressed by her quick understanding. A sound strategy, Eris acknowledged. Though incomplete without political protection to complement magical safeguards. A determined smile curved her lips. Which house Boreas Greyrat is now positioned to provide? Aegea's ears flattened slightly with concern. Your house's involvement complicates matters, potentially exposing more individuals to targeting. My house is already targeted, Eris countered firmly. Better to fight with full knowledge than remain vulnerable through ignorance. As the night deepened, practical arrangements were made for the following day's tournament semifinals. Ghislaine would coordinate with Boreas Greyrat security forces to establish additional protective measures around the arena, while Aegea would conduct reconnaissance to identify potential threats among the spectators. When the planning concluded, Eris personally showed them to guest chambers prepared for their overnight stay. As Naruto turned to enter his assigned room, the young noblewoman paused him with a light touch on his arm. One last question, she said, her voice softer than it had been during their strategic discussions. This fragment, does it ever speak to you? Share memories or intentions? The question struck Naruto as oddly specific. Sometimes I get impressions, he admitted. Flashes of knowledge I shouldn't have. Emotions that don't feel entirely my own. Why do you ask? Eris hesitated, uncertainty replacing her usual confidence. Because since I was a child, I've had dreams of flying over mountains that don't exist in our world. Of battles between beings too vast to comprehend. Her green eyes met his with unexpected vulnerability. And sometimes, I know things about dragon magic that I've never been taught. The revelation hung in the air between them, its implications momentous. Could Eris herself carry some connection to the ancient conflict? Was that the real reason Hidegami's servants had targeted her? We should tell Ghislaine, Naruto suggested after absorbing this revelation. Tomorrow, Eris decided, her composure returning. Tonight, we both need rest before the semifinals. Whatever cosmic game we've been drawn into, I still intend to win this tournament. With that characteristic determination reasserted, she departed for her own chambers, leaving Naruto with new questions and possibilities to consider as he prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring not only tournament challenges but the continuing expansion of their understanding about the fragment, Hidegami's servants. And now potentially Eris's own unexpected connection to the ancient conflict that spanned dimensions. As he drifted toward sleep, Naruto felt the golden energy pulsing gently within him, not with warning or aggression, but with something that felt almost like anticipation. Whatever revelations awaited, the fragment itself seemed prepared to meet them. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.